Let's see that. People, yesterday in the last session of the evening, what we had covered was um, weathering. Okay, the last of the weathering we were done with physical weathering and biological weathering, and we saw the effects of weathering, significance of weathering, the rates of weathering, and so on and so forth. Okay. Now the next thing that we are going to do, like we had checked out what weathering is. Remember, I had told you yesterday that we are beginning with exogenic processes. Okay. Anybody else who doesn't understand Hindi here? There were just two kids now who don't really understand Hindi, and they are not present here. Okay. So, um, like we were discussing, exogenic processes will have weathering. There is another process called as erosion. And then there are the various landforms that are formed through the process of erosion or deposition. Okay. So we are looking at all those processes, right? So, and mass movements being one of them. Okay. Mass movements is one form of exogenic movement. So we are mass movements is just a continuation of weathering. Okay. Please understand that mass movements are different in a way that they do not happen in one place. Okay. What mass movements say is that all the weathered debris and whatever debris or accumulated debris are, which are usually placed atop a slope. Okay. Placed atop a slope, they are going to come down. Okay. The only factor that they come down through, the most prerequisite factor that they come down through is going to be gravity. Okay. Other than that, if rainfall, lubricating action of water, or some kind of landslide, or any kind of tectonic movement triggers the landslide, that is a different thing altogether. Okay. But mass movement essentially means that something that was gathered or accumulated on the top of a slope gradually or quickly, either ways, the movement can be fast, the movement can be slow, but it comes down the slope. Okay. The downslope movement of material is called as mass wasting. Okay. Now that can be keep on, yeah. How did I forget that? Yeah, kiddos, if you have a lot of time, do something better. Who's Manthan Mokashi? Who's Manthan Mokashi? Is there a Manthan Mokashi here?
Yes.
Oh, that's you. Oh, I thought you were the one annotating, and I thought you were in the classroom. That's okay. I just needed to check. All right. ठीक है. Yep. What is it? Whose name is Manthan? You are just pointing out things. That poor kid is sitting in the classroom over there. You don't even know the names of your classmates. I think you people are so dazed. If I ask you your name, they're going to respond. No, but I'm not talking to you. That's okay. These are just these kids in the classroom. They don't even know their own names, let alone other people's.
I collected from Mumbai.
You annotated? That's okay.
Yes,
That's all right.
I have collected from Mumbai.
That's totally okay. Okay. No worries. No problem at all. Okay. Here we are. So back to this, we are saying that mass movements is simply the downslope movement of accumulated material. Okay, material that is accumulated on the top of the slope comes down. Now that can come down quickly or that can come down in a slow fashion, but it will come down. Okay? That is what we are talking about when we say mass movements. So mass wasting or mass movements is the movement of unconsolidated. We are talking of unconsolidated. We are not talking of proper, huge boulder. We are talking of huge boulders, rocks, but we are talking of unattached things. Okay, things are not attached. Things which are not attached to the ground or to the original rock. We are talking of such things. Okay, unconsolidated weathered materials which come down the slope, and the very, very basic reason why they come down is due to gravity. Okay, they're coming down due to gravitational forces. Guys, do you mind? Yellow shirt. Okay. Now the movement, like we discussed, may be gradual or sudden, and it is dependent. And what does it depend upon? What does the rate of the movement depend upon? It depends upon the slope. It depends upon the gradient of the slope, whether the slope is gentle by nature or whether it is a steeper slope. If it is a steeper slope, will the movement be faster or slower? Faster. Yeah, I know that. I need to ask somebody over there. You, light green colored shirt at the very back of the class. Hi. Thank you. If the slope is steep, would the movement, downslope movement be faster or would it be slower? अगर स्लोप स्टीप होगा तो ये जो यहाँ से यहाँ मूवमेंट है, डाउनस्लोप मूवमेंट होती है मटेरियल की, क्या वो जल्दी जल्दी होगी या आराम से होगी? जल्दी जल्दी होगी. ओके, ठीक है, सिट डाउन. I just needed to check if you guys are good with the basics. So clearly, it will depend upon the gradient of the slope. It will depend upon the weight of the weathered materials. Okay, the more the material, the faster the movement. Okay, clearly, and availability of lubricating moisture. Obviously, as long as the moisture is not available, the movement will still happen. The material is still going to come down slope. But if the moisture is available, if lubricating moisture is available in the form of precipitation or maybe groundwater seepage or something like that, then in that case also the movement will be faster. Okay, so clearly the movement will depend upon the gradient of the slope, the weight of the weathered materials, and the availability of lubricating moisture. Okay, mass movements have to be, please remember, they have to be aided by gravity alone. They cannot work in any other way. Okay, that is gravity which makes it come down slope. The lubrication is just another added factor. It's the cherry on the top. All right, okay, it is the gravity which is really causing. The water can act as a catalyst, but the basic reason, the fundamental reason why the material moves downslope is going to always be gravity. Okay, please remember, this is very different from erosional and transportation and deposition movement. Okay, this is not this, even though this is a kind of a translocation that materials are moving from point A to point B, but this is not like what happens in erosion. It is not like, you see what happens in erosion normally is there is a dynamic agent like running water, sea waves, or wind, or something like that. It will erode a material. It will erode the surface or the crust of a crust or the rocks itself, and then it will carry that material with itself while it is moving. It is in motion, right? The agent is in motion, so clearly it will carry that material itself and go and deposit it someplace. Okay, this is the total process of erosion and deposition. All right, okay. Mass movements are not like that. Mass movements do not, we are not saying that in mass movements there is a kind of erosion or deposition happening. Okay, the material simply moves down slope. That is all that is happening, aided by gravity alone. Lubricating factor is a different thing altogether. Okay, even if it is not available, the material still moves down slope. Okay, please remember, it's not an erosional process, even though materials are shifted from one place to another. Is this clear? Yeah. All right. Let's look at the various activating clauses for it. One, first of all, removal of support from below. Okay. We are saying that the support from below is removed. Okay, so when we say the support from below is removed, remember yesterday I was telling you that when weathering happens, sometimes a tunnel is made. Okay, so we are saying there is a mountain over here and we make a tunnel through it. Okay, what happens is when we make a tunnel, the material that was here beneath the tunnel, that is all removed away. Okay, so essentially this entire column of rock is now left unsupported. Okay, similarly, what happens is when we cut through cliffs, okay, especially if you're traveling through Ghats, you should see that the roads are made through cliffs, right? You can see overhanging cliffs above your head when you're traveling through the Ghats. So even that material, that overhanging cliff is also left unsupported, which means there is always a possibility that it can come down. Okay, unsupported material always has the probability or possibility of coming down. All right, so that is one reason. The other reason is increase in gradient and height of slopes. Okay, sometimes the gradient, because of construction that we do, because of human activities, anthropogenic activities, the slopes. Are you guys be quiet or you leave the classroom? Huh? I am not going to give you another warning. You are 16, 17 years old, I am assuming. At least that much. I'm sure you went through preliminary schools where you were asked to sit in the classroom and pay attention and not make noise and that kind of thing. That is very basic etiquette, people. You may or may not want to pay attention to whatever I'm saying. That is perfectly fine. You do not get to disturb my class. Do you understand that? If I see another guy talking over here for whatever reason, even if it's a life-threatening situation, I am sending you out of the classroom. Do you understand that? I will not hear any excuses. And do not talk on the phones. That is rude. स्पेशली बताओ आपको लोग कोई और क्लास क्यों नहीं चुनते हैं जाके आप ऑनलाइन सुन लीजिएगा मेरा लेक्चर आप जितनी भी बातें करेंगे मुझे कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ेगा जस्ट गो एंड सिट इन सम अदर क्लासरूम आई टीच दीस 4 kids who are actually pay attention Okay, back to thing. We say that various activities की वजह से, because of various activities, what happens is there is an increase in the gradient of the slope. Okay, sometimes the gradient of the slope increases or the height of the slope increases, and because of that, the probability of the material coming downwards becomes greater. Okay. Overloading by natural or artificial means. Overloading समझता है आपको? Originally there was a cliff over here. We say there is a cliff over here, and there was no material over here. Okay, there is no material on the top of the cliff. Okay, now what happens is, say for example, we go ahead and make those tunnels and go through those construction activities that we do. What happens is that we will remove all that material. There is no way we can take all that material downstairs again, right? We don't take all that material from the guards. We'll just pile it to the sides. Okay, normally when we people work, when human beings work over there, especially in India, we just pile the material on the sides. When this material is piled on the sides, as long as it gets a little lubricating moisture, the entire weathered material or entire debris are going to start falling down. Okay, that is what happens. This is artificial means. Natural means is when a lot of rainfall happens, when there's a lot of precipitation and water sweeps all those debris or all those weathered materials to the side of the cliffs, and that can be another reason for this to happen. Okay, so this is overloading by natural or artificial means. Next is overloading due to heavy rainfall, saturation, lubrication of slope materials. You have to understand, as long as water plays a role, as long as water comes actively into the lubricating mode, then clearly there will be the slope materials are going to get lubricated. They're going to be a little more fluid than solid. Okay, so the possibility of it coming down is greater. Of course, tectonic movements like earthquakes, generally landslides वगैरह वो trigger हो सकते हैं. Explosions or machinery that we use, especially when we are constructing, that can also weaken the slope, and hence the possibility of a landslide happening greater. Excessive natural seepage could be there. Sometimes if there is a heavy rainfall, then the water goes inside. Okay, water table को बढ़ा देता है, but sometimes if there is an impermeable strata below, okay, कि पानी उस level से नीचे pass ही नहीं करेगा. The water simply cannot go below that level. The water tends to accumulate in the above level, and that can cause the material to become more fluid. Okay, so वो एक problem हो सकती है. Excessive natural seepage हो सकता है. Heavy drawdown of water from rivers. Now this is a very complicated thing, but you pay attention. Okay, आप थोड़ा सा ध्यान दीजिए. We are saying this is a reservoir. Okay, reservoir समझता, you understand the reservoir for a tank. Okay, it is a huge container sort of a thing which we have built to contain the water of the river. Okay, and it is kept behind the walls of the dam or behind the sluices. Once the sluice gates are open, then clearly the water is let out. You understand the construction of a general dam, right? So we are saying this is the reservoir. Okay, so once the water starts filling into this reservoir and the level of the water starts rising over here, the level of the groundwater surrounding the reservoir also has to cope. Okay, because that is the natural way of things. That if the level of water in a certain container, and this is a natural container, right? So if the level of water in a certain container rises, then clearly the groundwater in the surrounding levels is also going to rise to keep pace with it. Okay, so यहाँ पर say suppose if this is the level of water over here, okay, in the reservoir, if filled this much water, then clearly groundwater is also keeping level. Okay, groundwater भी उसका थोड़ा से पास ही होता है. The groundwater is almost level with that. All right. Now what happens is that for some reason, for human activities or for some other reason, we remove the water from the reservoir. Okay, we utilize that water, so that is called as drawdown. Okay, the process of removing water from the reservoir for our purposes is called as drawdown. So if there is a heavy drawdown from such dams or reservoirs, this level falls down. Okay, this level is going to fall down, and this groundwater, it is a natural way, right? It has built up this level through natural means and over a period of time. It is not going to fall down immediately with the rest of the reservoir, right? So it will try to rapidly move over here and level with this water. Okay, तो ये जो outflow होता है ना पानी का from the groundwater से जो reservoir की तरफ outflow होता है, उसकी वजह से what will happen is friction is reduced, the slopes become more lubricated, and the possibility of a landslide increases. Okay, so this is what has happened with the Three Gorges Dam, especially the Shuping landslide and all. This was a very disastrous thing in China at that time. So people have attributed this to the fact that there is that huge dam, and of course that dam is overworked. You put in more water, you hold that water, the hydrostatic pressure already triggers earthquakes and stuff like that. And then clearly apart from that, there is also this fact that there is a heavy drawdown from that reservoir, which means that the possibility of landslides also increases. Okay, because this movement of water is going to weaken the slope. It is going to lubricate the slope. It is going to it is going to lessen the friction. It's going to lessen the shear resistance and all that sort of thing. So clearly the possibility of a landslide becomes greater. Okay, okay, and indiscriminate removal of natural vegetation. How when you were kids, say about 5, 6 years ago, have you heard of a disaster in Maharashtra called as Marin? There was a village in Marin, remember? So this is the reason now, the next reason that we are considering. What we had witnessed there was that a heavy rainfall happened, okay? The village is somewhere in the below the foothills, okay? एक छोटा सा hill था, उसके नीचे नीचे की तरफ वो village था, okay? What happened was all the water, because of the heavy precipitation, all the water came down, and along with it slopes के ऊपर जो mud थी वो भी उसके साथ आई. So it was a proper mud flow, and in that mud flow the entire village was buried, okay? Very few survivors. There was entire destruction. The village was rehabilitated in a different place now. So clearly that's a whole different thing, but this is what we are talking about. The reason was indiscriminate removal of natural vegetation. If you see the photographs of Marin before, you will notice that the hill that was, if this is the village, okay, if at the bottom of this, if you find the village over here, so the hill had a lot of trees over here, okay? वो hill के ऊपर अच्छा खासा ये था, vegetation था. What do trees do with the soil? They keep on holding the soil, okay? They keep the soil in place. They do not let the soil move. They will keep the soil rooted in its place, okay? Once you remove the trees, what happens? The soil becomes free to move down with the water, okay? So the moment that heavy precipitation happened, that entire mud was free to flow down slope and become the part of that scary mud flow and bury the village, okay? ठीक है, समझा? So indiscriminate removal of natural vegetation is also going to be a reason for landslides or similar activities, okay, or mass movements. Are we good here, people? Have you understood this? Very rarely will you be asked. Sometimes UPSC poses a question like it will give you 4 options and ask you out of these, which of these are activating clauses or which of these are factors for a landslide or not. But you need to remember this, okay? All right. Yeah, generally, whatever mass movements are available, we are classifying them in the form of this particular triangle. आपको flow दिखाई देना चाहिए. Okay. Can you see upwards over here? You can see that flow over there. Can you see this flow? Right? There is a flow over here. There is a slide over here. So the movements over here are more of a sliding thing. What is a slide? It will always touch the surface it is moving along, right? That is a slide, right? What is a heave? Something is being pushed out. Heave is something being pushed. Have you ever seen those small stones sometimes being pushed out of the soil? That is a heave. अपने यहाँ बहुत कम दिखता है. It has to happen in a permafrost or a semi frosted semi like where you will see a lot of ice ना, वहां पर usually आपको heaves नजर आते हैं. अपने यहाँ पे इंडिया में heave आपको usually northern side में थोड़ा नजर आएगा. Okay, ठीक है. And then of course there's the flow. What does flow involve? Rapid movement, right? It has to move rapidly. So clearly it has to be a little more watery. Now we are checking out the rest of the mass movements, how they are placed. Okay, soil creep दिखाई दे रहा है आपको यहाँ पे. Soil creep, it is more of a slow, very quiet movement. Okay, very imperceptible, slow, quiet movement. So that will be, it does not require water or anything. Talus creep is a little faster because clearly the the stones are a little larger, but then clearly it will still not require any kind of water over here. And rock slides are huge rocks which are sliding down the mountain slope. That also does not require water, but these movements are very rapid and very destructive. Okay, ठीक है, समझा? This is heave to slide, right? These movements go from heave to slide. Now let's look at heave to flow. Okay, let's look at these movements. यहाँ पे आपको usually एक ही movement मिलता है, solifluction. Okay, solifluction करके एक movement होता है. That you will find that the soil जो होता है, it trickles along. Okay, it trickles down slope. थोड़ा सा trickle करता है down slope. That will be called as solifluction. Okay, it is neither fast neither slow. So nor fast neither slow. That kind of a movement. Okay. And now you come to these movements where you go from slide to flow. Okay, clearly the movements are a bit faster on this side, and the only difference is they can either be dry or they can be wet. Okay, so यार आपको अटेंडेंस लिखने में इतना ये लगता है क्या, बात करने की जरूरत पड़ती है? वो जो पीछे के बेंच के बच्चे हैं ना, आप उठिए जरा वहां से. आई हैव नो विजुअल ऑफ यू. लास्ट बेंचर्स प्लीज कैन यू गेट अप? हिंदी नहीं समझता है आप लोग को? इंग्लिश समझता है? विच लैंग्वेज डू यू अंडरस्टैंड द बेस्ट? People at the back of the people are sitting on the last bench. People who are sitting at the back of the class, can you please get up and move forward to the front, to the benches in the front? यार वो फ्रंट लग रहा है आपको? यहाँ पे भी पंखा है, आइए आपके लिए पंखा है सिर्फ. वो पीछे जो बच्चे बैठे हैं वो भी उठ जाइए वहां से. Second last bench, that also please get up people. And you girls cannot sit together or you cannot sit in this class. I've had enough of you. The girls at the back of the bench, come and sit over here in the front. And you people get up and sit over here. Are you girls? Yes, thank you. And once again, no talking. If I find anybody talking in the classroom, I'm sending you outside. All right, we were discussing, now we are going from movements which alternate between slide to flow. Okay, alternate means but which are progressing from slide to flow. Now clearly the difference you see is, if materials are sliding along, you do not require water there. Okay, but if they are flowing, then you require that lubricating water. Okay, clearly for a flow you will require lubricating water. For a slide, it's not so much. All right, so here we are: rock slides, landslides, earth flows, mud flows. These are all very fast movements. Okay, clearly fast movements. But if they are slides like a rock slide or a landslide, then clearly no water is required. Agar pani milta hai to well and good, it is even better. The movement will be faster, more rapid. But clearly the water is not a requirement. Okay, it's not a requirement. Whereas earth flow and mud flow are clearly watering movements. They will require at least some amount of water. Mud flow more so than that of water. Okay, mud flows will always take a little more water than earth flows do. Okay, is this clear? हाँ, ये सब क्लियर है कि कौन से मूवमेंट्स को पानी लगता है, कौन से मूवमेंट्स को पानी नहीं लगता है, राइट? ओके, मूविंग फॉरवर्ड, मास मूवमेंट्स को हम 3 कैटेगरीज में क्लासिफाई करते हैं. वी क्लासिफाई देम इन 3 कैटेगरीज: स्लो मूवमेंट्स, रैपिड मूवमेंट्स एंड लैंडस्लाइड्स. ओके, ठीक है. नाउ स्लो मूवमेंट्स आर ऑब्वियसली दोस दैट आर गोइंग टू टेक अ लॉन्ग टाइम फॉर द मटेरियल टू कम डाउन स्लोप. Rapid movements are obviously those that are going to come down faster. Okay, ठीक है. And landslides are a category in itself. We'll check that out. See, this is the first movement. We are talking of slow movements where little water is required. We are not saying that no water. We are saying very little water is required. If water is not available, we can still work with it. Okay? Okay? The first movement is soil creep. Black shirt, go out. Go out. Yeah, I too. Me too. I'm very sorry. Please leave. You both too. Leave the classroom. Brown shirt and the one in the middle. I can't even see your face. Striped shirt. Leave. Black shirt, leave. Oh, you're Black Panther also. Oh, hello, sir. बैग लेके जाइए अपने. कहाँ घूमने के लिए जाएंगे? क्या करते हैं? नहीं, यहाँ मत बैठिए. आप बातें करते रहेंगे, आप सुनेंगे नहीं मेरी बात. मैं क्लास बार बार डिस्टर्ब करके आपको बताती रहूंगी कि मैनर्स होते हैं, एटिकेट्स होते हैं, बात मत कीजिए क्लास में. लेट्स नॉट डू द प्रोसेस अगेन एंड अगेन. इट्स अ पैटर्न, राइट? लेट्स नॉट रिपीट इट. बैठिए. And go and sit in the classroom, okay? Don't wander around here and there. Okay, soil creeps. Soil creeps जो होते हैं, creeping का movement समझता है? It's a very quiet movement. Okay, creeping. रेंगना जिसको हम कहते हैं, that movement. Okay, we are talking about that movement. So it's a very slow, imperceptible movement of materials. Now what happens here is, यहाँ पर देखिए. Okay, so it has to be a gentle slope. The requirement here is not a steep slope. The requirement here is a gentle slope. Okay, so materials, the usual soil, छोटा सा soil जो होता है, smaller soil over here from the top starts to move downwards धीरे से. Okay, the movement is going to take at least 40 to 50 years to actually show results. Okay, for it to show results, proper results, visible results, is going to take at least 40 to 50 years. So this soil from the top of the slope starts to move downwards. Okay, and since we cannot see, as human beings, we cannot see the soil moving downwards, what we can see is the effect of that movement on the rest of the landforms. Okay, these poles, can you see these electric poles? They should ideally be vertically straight. Okay, they usually curve a little outward. Fences also curve a little outward. These trees, the trees that you can see over here, the roots are a little bent. Okay, you can clearly see that roots थोड़े से bend हो जाते हैं. Okay, ये जो घरों के walls होते हैं, the walls of the houses, because of the pressure of the soil coming down on it, start to crack. You can clearly see cracks on the walls of the houses or any other walls that you see. Okay, permanent structures जो होते हैं, they start to crack a little. Okay, so this movement has to happen over a lot of years, at least 40 to 50 years, but you can clearly see these movements. Okay, let me show you. No, this is wrong. See this? Can you see this? Clearly bent, right? The curves, there is a clear curve at the root of the tree, right? The roots are clearly bent. Near the roots, the trees are clearly bent a little. So that is because of the pressure of the soil acting upon it. Huh? That makes sense? This is the fence that I was talking about. Can you see the fence should ideally be erect? Okay. What has happened to the fence? It has gone a little teda. It has gone a little inclined. Fine. So this is what happens. Okay, so this was soil creep for you. Okay, next जो होता है that is solifluction. Solifluction meaning clearly the soil is flowing a little. Okay, that is what we are saying, that the soil is slightly flowing. Okay, now this is a slow downslope movement of soil mass or fine grained rock debris. Okay, what happens is, can you see these little trickles over here? I don't know if you can. Can you see these little trickles of soil over here on the land? Can you make those out in the picture? Yeah, you can. Okay, so we are saying what happens is this soil is going to move a little. Okay, it's going to flow a little, trickle a little downwards. This is what happens in solifluction. Okay, now let's try to understand this does not happen everywhere. Okay, what is required here is a land base. Okay, the land or the soil that we are talking about is actually soft soil upwards. Okay, fine grained soil like clay or something like that upwards, and then an impermeable strata or frozen soil downwards. Okay, usually the soil just below it is a little frozen. Okay, now what happens is when there is a little rainfall, thoda sa rainfall ho jata hai, there is a little kind of precipitation, this soil becomes wetter and the water starts to travel downwards. Okay, now clearly yahan par to frozen layer hai, there is a frozen layer beneath. Can the water go down from here? No, it cannot. Okay, the water cannot penetrate, or it is not permeable over here at all. This layer is not permeable. The water cannot go down from the frozen parts of the soil. So clearly what happens is the water remains in the upper layer. What happens if the water remains in the upper layer? The layer becomes a little fluid, it becomes a little lubricated, and it starts to trickle down the ground in such a fashion. Okay, this is called as solifluction. Okay, is this understood? This usually happens in humid, temperate regions where, or semi-frozen regions where you have received a little rainfall or a little precipitation. All right, okay. Clear so far? Why do I feel like you people, you have lost, I have lost you completely? Do you understand what I'm saying? Yes, you do. Okay. So this is solifluction. All right. Okay. Solifluction ka, I'll show you another picture. Hopefully that should make more sense. See, this makes more sense. Now you can clearly see the trickles over there. You can clearly see that the soil is accumulated in small ridges like that. Yeah, you can clearly see that. That is solifluction. Okay. This is talus creek. What you can see here is talus. Let me explain what talus is. This is a mountain. This is typically, this is Mount Rushmore in South Dakota in USA. 4 presidents are carved on top of it. This is Washington, then Jefferson, then Teddy Roosevelt, and Abe Lincoln. Okay, so that is how it is. Okay, these 4 presidents are supposed to show the 4 phases of development of USA, how USA was developed, and that is why the monument was made. But that is how it is. So say for example, you have a hill. Okay, there is a proper hill you have. Then at the base of the hill, यहाँ पे नीचे base दिखाई दे रहा है. Can you make out the base? Can you see those little debris or little weathered material gathered over there, right? Those smaller pieces of rock. That is called as talus. Okay, these are talus cones. These are the riskiest things to how do you say, navigate when you are hiking. When you are hiking, this is the riskiest thing to do because these tend to slip very fast. Okay, ये बहुत जल्दी slip कर जाते हैं, and that is why talus cones are scary. But anyways, what we are saying here is that usually the talus is coarse and angular rock fragments, which are usually lying at the base of a steep slope. And this talus cones jo hote hai, they move down the mountain slope little by little. Okay, so this movement will definitely happen. Look at the rock creep. Okay, we are saying just like talus or soil or any other small pebbles or something, even the rocks are going to creep a little. Okay, except the rock creep is a little, it will simply look like tumbled rocks. Like the rock is tumbling, but it tumbles and then it sits down. It tumbles and it sits down again. Okay, settles down. So we are saying rock creep usually looks something like that, where the rocks move downhill away from the parent formation, and you can see the bending of the layers of rocks and stuff like that. Okay, that usually happens in a rock creep. Okay, now we are done with all kinds of slow movements. Now we are looking at rapid movements, okay, where enough water is required. For rapid movements, you will require water, okay. There are those movements where you do not require water, but those we will include in landslides, okay, not in this. We are checking out movements that will require water. This is earth flow. This figure that you can see, that is that of an earth flow, okay, where we are saying that the earth is flowing, okay. There is movement of water. Here clearly the soil is made up of claying material. What is this? What is the very striking feature of clay? You at the back, maroon colored shirt. And your friend also. Okay. What is the very striking feature of clay? Clay की सबसे बड़ी खास बात क्या है? शेप बदलता है. क्यों? कब बदलता है उसका शेप? प्रेशर की वजह से एंड पानी की वजह से. हु सेड पानी? You, very correct. पानी की वजह से. What does clay do with that water? Does it hold it or does it allow it to pass? Holds it. Correct. Clay की सबसे बड़ी खासियत ये है कि clay holds on to the water. Clay जो मटेरियल है वो पोरस होता है, तो उसके जो पोर्स होते हैं, बड़े बड़े पोर्स. ये आप यहाँ कहाँ आ गए? मैंने बाय बाय बोला. हाँ. Quite the protest. Okay. So we are saying कि clay जो होता है it holds, उसके बीच में pores होते हैं, right? It has pores. तो वो pore spaces के बीच में it holds on to the water. Okay, it will keep holding on to that water. Take your friend also with you. Friend, please go with him. अरे what are you doing? I am not asking you to. मैं आपको ऐसे शतपावली करने के लिए नहीं बोल रही हूँ. I'm saying leave the classroom and take your friend along with you. Go and do something constructive with your time, man. अच्छा, हम डिबेट करने वाले हैं ये बात कि आप क्लास छोड़ के जाएंगे या नहीं जाएंगे? नहीं ना? हाँ, गुड, चाहिए. बाय. अरे वो, आई एम नॉट डूइंग दिस फॉर जोक. मैं ऐसे मजाक नहीं कर रही हूँ. आई एम रियली एलिमिनेटिंग ऑल पॉसिबल डिस्टर्बेंसेस फ्रॉम द क्लासरूम सो दैट आई कैन टीच कंटिन्यूअसली विद गुड फ्लो. मुझे कोई गुस्सा नहीं आ रहा है आप पे. आई स्वेयर टू गॉड मुझे गुस्सा नहीं आ रहा है. आप जाइए, चाहिए आप अच्छे से. आपको नोट्स मिल जाएंगे और ये यूट्यूब पे सुनने को मिलता है. प्लीज जाइए यार, टाइम ना वेस्ट कीजिए मेरा. प्लीज लीव. मैं सचमुच गुस्सा नहीं हूँ. गो 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 गो. जहाँ के बैठी. एंड आई कैन कीप डूइंग दिस विद एवरी 2 kids every 10 minutes. कि 2 लड़कों को उठाओ, 2 लड़कियों को उठाओ और बोलो जाओ जाओ. देन यू से नो नो वी वोंट लीव. एंड ये ड्रामा हम 10 मिनट में रिपीट नहीं कर सकते. प्लीज अंडरस्टैंड. ओके, सो वी आर सेइंग अर्थ फ्लो जो होता है, यहाँ पर आपको वाटर सैचुरेटेड क्ले सर्फेसेस होने चाहिए, लो एंगल स्लोप्स चाहिए. ओके, स्लोप्स के जो एंगल्स होते हैं वो लो होने चाहिए. यू डोंट वांट वेरी स्टीप स्लोप्स. ओके, स्टीप स्लोप्स पे अर्थ फ्लो नहीं वर्क करेगा. स्टीप स्लोप्स पे थोड़ा से पानी के बाद सीधा मड फ्लो आ जाएगा. ओके, सो वी आर सेइंग कि वाटर सैचुरेटेड होने चाहिए, क्योंकि अगर वो क्ले में पानी भर गया, वंस द वाटर फिल्स इनसाइड दैट क्ले, द क्ले विल नॉट रिमेन सॉलिड, इट विल ट्राई टू फ्लो. ओके, वो जो क्ले होता है इट विल ट्राई टू बिकम मोर फ्लूइड, and with it will take whatever was standing atop it. Okay, whatever piece of material, rock, soil, whatever was standing above it, it will start all moving downwards. Okay, so this is what we are saying, ki this has to be water saturated clay materials. It will form those terraces, you know, step like terraces are made. Can you see this part? Can you see this particular part? There is a scarp over here, there is a proper wall. Okay, usually that wall can be straighter where the material has moved. Remember, see, this material was clearly over here. Okay, now it has moved from here to here. You can clearly see that it has moved a little downwards. Okay, and what the scarp is visible now. Clearly the scarp where the जहाँ पर material था, that scarp is now clearly visible. Now that scarp can be straight or it can be arcuate. थोड़ा curved हो सकता है या straight scarp हो सकता है, but वो scarp अभी visible हो जाता है. And since this material has all moved downwards, can you see this little bulge over here? हाँ, ये मटेरियल वहां पे गैदर हो गया है, एक्यूमुलेट हो गया है, एंड टो के पास उसका अच्छा खासा बल्ज दिखाई दे रहा है. यू कैन क्लियरली मेक आउट अ बल्ज ओवर देयर. ओके, बिकॉज द मटेरियल हैज गैदर्ड ओवर देयर. दिस इज अ वेरी वेरी टिपिकल एग्जांपल ऑफ व्हाट एन अर्थ फ्लो लुक्स लाइक. ओके, thankfully for you people, usually UPSC does not, at your levels, at your NDA levels, UPSC does not question you over what the exact process of an earth flow or a mud flow is. The only difference that they will probably ask you is about whether the earth flow is faster or the mud flow is faster. And please remember, earth flow does not require more water. It is the mud flow which will take in all the water and move faster and way more destructive than what an earth flow can be. Okay, earth flow is a spectacle to see. Okay, mud flows are scary. They bury people, villages and everything, so they are more destructive, far more destructive. Okay, all right, moving on to mud flows. You clearly see from the picture also, you can see clearly that the mud is flowing downwards. It is, you know, it is trying to bury the vegetation, everything else in its path and trying to make a way forward. Okay, so usually what happens is mud flows happen in a place where there is absence of vegetation. Like we just discussed, Marin, we said that since there was indiscriminate removal of vegetation on the hillside, clearly all that mud that used to be attached to the roots of the trees was now free to move, and that mud started moving downwards. Okay, So this has to be, and this cannot be without water. Okay, this movement has to be aided by water. This cannot work on gravity alone. There has to be a good amount of water available. So maybe a good amount of precipitation, or maybe some kind of a river that is flowing, something, a channel has changed its course and gone some other way. So we are looking at such things. Okay, a dam has broken the wall and then hence the water is flowing outwards. So we are looking at various ways in which the water can reach that place. It can saturate it and the mud can flow down. Okay, frequently occurs on the slopes of erupting volcanoes. If you remember, हमने जब volcanoes किए थे, when we had discussed volcanoes, we had discussed two particular flows. One was lahars, the other was Noe Ardant. Remember? Okay, so lahars, I had told you, were the flows which involved water. Okay, so what happens is usually the volcano erupts. Okay, and it keeps the weathered debris and whatever debris are there, or whatever material, pyroclastic material and mud and ash it is throwing out, it keeps over there only. Okay, it sits over there along at the foothill of the volcano. Then what happens? Then it rains. There is heavy precipitation, especially somewhere in, if you look at the equatorial region, the place that I'm talking about is Indonesia. So clearly the place where it happened was that there was a heavy rainfall, and because of that heavy rainfall, all that volcanic material that was sitting there freely now started moving downslope. Okay, and that is called as a lahar. Okay, that is called as lahar, and that can be pretty destructive in nature. It can happen during an earthquake, during a volcanic eruption, or it can happen after a volcanic eruption. Both ways work, but mud flows can be scary that way. Okay, ठीक है. Now we move on to proper landslides. Okay, landslides जो होते हैं, they do not require water to flow. Okay, only gravity is enough. Just a gravitational force is enough. They can only move downwards due to gravity. Water is not required, but once water comes into play, these landslides become way more destructive. Okay, the first landslide that we are considering here is slump. Okay, ये slump दिखाई दे रहा है आपको. Slump माने समझता है, I'm sitting upright like this. Okay, if I move like this, you know, that becomes a slump. Okay, I move myself a little forward, because of which I go down. Okay, that is called as slump. We do that normally in our chairs. Okay, we always do that in our chairs. So we are saying this is a slump. Now you can see clearly what has happened is the material used to be at the top over there. Okay, at this point, this is where the material used to be. Original material used to be there. Okay, but because of that movement, because of the how do you say, the downward soil, whatever layers of soil exist downwards, what has happened is there is a backward rotation of the material and it has gone forward. Okay, अभी मैंने क्या किया, मैंने backward ही rotate किया ना, and then मैं आगे चली गई, right? Again, agree? तो वैसे ही ये material यहाँ से आगे move करता है. The material moves forward from here, and that is why it shifts downward vertically. Okay, ठीक है? The material moves forward, and that is why it shifts downward vertically, and this is called as a slump. Okay, there is always a backward rotation, and you can see the bulge over here. Can you see that bulge of the accumulated material at the toe of the structure? Yes. Okay, ठीक है? So that is a slump. बहुत बहुत पुराने टाइम में, एंड आई थिंक दिस इज सम 10-15 years ago, यूपीएससी यूज्ड टू गिव यू डायग्राम्स, है ना. एक्चुअली अभी तो आपको फिजिक्स के अलावा ज्यादातर डायग्राम्स नहीं देते. फिजिक्स में भी बहुत डायग्राम्स नहीं देते वो आपको, राइट. दे डोंट गिव यू फिगर्स एंड देन आस्क यू टू check things out around it, right? So they used to give this diagram and ask you to identify whether this is an earth slump or an earth flow or a debris flow or what. Like you used to be that is how you used to understand that. Okay, see, this is what a slump looks like in real life. Can you see the scarp over here? Can you see the scarp over here where the material used to be earlier? Can you see that? And now that the material has shifted forward, can you see the bulge over here? वो bulge नजर आपको नजर नहीं आ रहा है क्या? ये जितना clearly मुझको आ रहा है, can is the light shining on the board? Yes. Oh, तो फिर आपको जब PDF मिलेगा तो आप ठीक से देख लेना. हाँ, पिक्चर भेजती हूँ मैं. कहाँ गया वो बच्चा? हाँ, भेजती हूँ मैं, आज भेजती हूँ मैं, सारी देखती हूँ. Okay, now there is another one called as debris slide. Okay, debris माने जो भी ऐसा टूटा टूटा material होता है, we are talking of that. Okay, that is the debris. Okay, the remaining material, the weathered down material, the remnant material, we are talking of that. Okay, the one that is broken fragments and stuff like that. So all these debris will rapidly roll or slide down the earth without backward rotation. Now here we are talking about a simple slide. We say there is a slope, there are debris atop over here, and all these debris will rapidly slide downwards. Okay, that is all that we are saying. Okay, that is a debris slide. Now we come to rock slides and rock falls. Okay, so earlier we were dealing in either soil or we were dealing in debris. Okay, smaller size of the material. Now we are dealing in larger size of materials. We are talking about rocks now, proper rocks. Okay, so rock slide, ये जो picture नजर आ रहा है, that is a rock slide. Okay, left में. So what we are saying essentially is that this is a mountain slope. There are rocks over here. Clearly, there are a lot of rocks over there, right? All these rocks, because of a trigger like a landslide or because of construction or because of heavy rainfall, heavy precipitation, heavy snowfall, these rocks can suddenly start coming downwards. Okay, so and when we say slide, we are saying that the original material, the rocks, remain in contact with the slope. Okay, that is what we are saying. If they remain in contact with the slope, then that is called as a slide. Okay, usually very high velocity se aate hain, steep slopes pe aate hain, and they can be very destructive and dangerous. The picture that you see is from Uttarakhand. Okay, this picture is clearly from Uttarakhand over there. Whoever's talking at the back of the class, please stop talking. Okay, the next is rock fall. What you can't see in the picture is the rock falling. ये जो नजर आ रहा है आपको धुआं धुआं, हाँ, can you make out the dust over there? It is because that rock has finally hit the ground and it has thrown up this dust off. Okay, the rock, there was a rock over here. Okay, then that rock fell straight down. Okay, and because of that, all this dust was raised. This entire dust storm was raised, and now the dust is going to settle. This is in some national park in USA. I don't remember which one, but this is usually what rock falls are. We are saying that this is a cliff. Okay, this is the bottom of the valley. This is the cliff. We are talking of, this is the cliff face. Okay, this is the cliff face, and there is a rock sitting over here. Okay, there is a nice rock sitting over there, perched over there. What happens is, because of some reason, if the rock does fall down, this is a vertical slope. Okay, so it is not going to slide along, right? What is going to happen is, since the slope is vertical now, the rock will simply fall down. Okay, it will fall down clearly, and hence the movement will be way more rapid and way more destructive than what a slide could have been. Okay, because it is faster movement. Rock falls are always faster and usually dry. Even rock slides are usually dry movements. Okay, rock slides, rock falls are both dry movements. Sometimes that can also cause an avalanche because that rock fell, so the rest of the rocks can start follow suit, and that can be an avalanche. Okay, the next movement that you see here is a landslide. Okay, landslides जो होते हैं उसका सबसे बेसिक ये हाउ डू यू से क्वालिटी ये होता है कि वी डू नॉट रिक्वायर वाटर. The water is not a requirement. It can happen without the water. If the water is available, if there is a lubricating force of water available, lubricating action of water available, then clearly the landslide will be faster. Okay, वो थोड़ा ज़्यादा fast हो जाएगा. And it has to happen on steep slopes. The slopes have to be steep. They cannot be gentle slopes. Okay, gentle slopes पे landslides नहीं work करते. The slopes have to be steeper. All right, ठीक है. So this occurs on steep slopes of mountains or cliffs. And usually that happens when it is undercut by rivers or by gravity. Okay, so say for example, say this is a mountain. Okay, now I start to make a road over here. Okay, I want to make a road over here, so I cut through it. I make a tunnel through it, and I cut through it, and I want to make a road over there. Okay, now what has happened is, this has been undercut now by human efforts. This base of the cliff has been undercut. Okay, which means this entire structure is left unsupported. Okay, which means this can all come down. Okay, in the form of a landslide or any other way, this can all come down. Please remember, unsupported structures have to come down. All right, okay. And this can also happen, this can happen due to gravity, or it can be cut by rivers also. That is also one thing that happens in natural landscapes. This can also be triggered by earthquakes or volcanic eruptions. Okay, the material sitting atop over there, because of a volcanic eruption or an earthquake, the material is triggered, it falls down, the material falls down slope, and there is a proper downslope movement. Okay, this can happen. One very scary way of this happening is that I'm going to describe now. We are looking at, say suppose this is a slope. Okay, this is the slope of a mountain. Okay, this layer on the top over here is something like granite or limestone or sandstone. Okay, we are talking of proper rocks. Okay, we are saying granite या limestone या sandstone जैसा कोई layer है यहाँ पे. Okay, so this is a layer. These are usually jointed or poured rocks. Okay, through which water can connect and pass. Okay, तो उसको बुलाते हैं permeable layers. Okay, those are called as permeable layers. You too, leave the classroom. Leave the classroom. I let you go the first time. I cannot let this go the second time. See, she slept. Immediately slept. After she had her chota 2 minute ka talk, she slept. The friend in front of you. You both were still continuing to talk. So please leave. You sleep, Baba. You sleep. Leave. Don't take all the time in the world to do that. Go and sit in some other class. Okay. Next, we are saying कि ऊपर का जो layer है slope का, that is going to be granite, sandstone, limestone. The reason why I am naming these rocks is because water can pass through this. Granite, weathered granite is clearly jointed. Okay, water can pass through it in the form of cracks. There are cracks developed and water can pass through. Please leave. Okay, sandstone का भी same है. Porous होता है वो rock. The pores can connect to each other and the water can pass straight through the rock downwards. Okay, limestone भी jointed होता है, so clearly water can pass through the cracks. Okay. So this kind of rock exists above a impermeable layer like clay. Once again, what is the speciality with clay? It is porous, it can hold the water. Okay. Now understand that on this slope, if there is a heavy rainfall, okay, if there is a heavy rainfall, what happens is the water will pass through the rock. वो जो ऊपर का rock का layer है, वहां से पानी नीचे की तरफ pass करेगा. The water will pass through that first layer. It will not do anything to the first layer clearly because the water is simply passing through it. Okay. This layer of rock cannot hold the water. It can only allow the water to pass through it. So it will pass through this layer and move on to the second layer, which is clay. Okay. What does clay do with the water? Does it allow the water to pass forward? No. What does clay do? It holds the water. And once there is enough water, the clay is saturated enough, clay starts to flow. Okay. And if this clay starts to flow, will the above layer remain jaisa tha वैसे? No. Clearly, that layer will also move along with the clay. Do you realize the catastrophic nature of that landslide? You're saying an entire mountain side is going to come down along with the clay layer, and whatever limestone, granite or sandstone was sitting atop it, everything is going to come downstairs, okay, downwards. And that movements can be usually very, very, very devastating. All right, okay, clear? This is pretty depressing, right? इतने सारे disasters होते रहते वो. Let me take a break and then we'll do soil. Okay. The reason why we were looking at weathering and mass movements and everything was we needed to see how soil is developed. Okay. So the next stage is obviously going to be how soil is developed over here. We are saying, let us describe what soil is. We are saying soil is that layer that covers the surface of the earth. Okay, that is that layer. What does it contain? Usually organic matter, minerals, whatever came from the parent rock, those minerals, gases, liquids, and organisms, live organisms, earthworms, termites, वगैरह. You find all those, right, in the soil. So those also organisms you'll see, everything that supports life, okay, together that supports life. And there is obviously here within the soil, there is obviously one thing that we need to consider, the size of the grain of the soil, okay, the size of the grains of the soil. If they are very large in size, then clearly the water retention will be a little lesser. They can hold more air, but water may be a little more and all. If the grain size is too small, if the grain size is very, very small, then clearly it cannot hold much water, much air. It affects the fertility of the soil one way or another. Okay, so clearly the size of the soil is going to affect the fertility of the soil and its air and water retention capacity. Okay, and whatever the terminology for the term for studying soil is called as pedology. Okay, okay. Now these are the 5 factors that affect the formation of soil. Okay, we are looking at factors that affect the formation of soil. The first thing being parent material. What is parent material? From which the soil is derived. Okay, there was a rock sitting atop there. Okay, it got weathered. Clearly the regolith formed, and that regolith was later ground to further smaller size, grain size, and that contributed to the soil. Okay, so where do the minerals from that rock come from that soil come from? From the original rock. Okay, so that happens to be your parent material. Okay, that is usually your parent material that contributes all the minerals, and original minerals जो होते हैं soil के, they come from that parent material, from where the weathered material comes from. Okay, ठीक है. Topography is another important factor. We are saying what happens in topography, meaning we are checking flat surface hai, gentle slope hai, steep slope hai, gentle slope hai. We are looking at that. Okay, so we are saying that the soil cover is usually thinner on steep slopes. If the slope is steep, then clearly the soil has a tendency to move downwards. It will not accumulate and form a thick layer of soil. Okay, clearly that is not going to happen. There will thick layers of soil be formed on flat surfaces. Wherever you find flat plains, flat lands, over there the soil keeps on accumulating and becoming a thick layer of soil. Okay, do we want the layer of soil to be thicker or thinner? Soil का layer thick होना चाहिए या thin होना चाहिए? थिक होना चाहिए, अदरवाइज हमको कहाँ से मिलेगा, हम उगाएंगे क्या उसमें, वेजिटेशन कैसे ग्रो करेंगे उसमें, राइट? सो क्लियरली वी नीड अ थिक लेयर ऑफ सॉइल. So once again, so that can happen. You have to also consider this, that say in mid latitudes, somewhere in the mid latitudes, you have to consider mountain slopes now. Okay, so in mid latitudes, if you consider the northern hemisphere, then southward facing slopes, this has to be in a diagram. Say this is the earth, this is the equator, and say this is a mountain range over here. Okay, okay. Now the side that you are looking at is the southward facing slope. The side that you cannot see is the northward facing slope. Agreed? Okay. So southward facing slopes जो होते हैं, they usually get a lot of sun. Okay, so clearly the soil becomes better over there. The quality of the soil is far better than that of the northward facing slope because you get some exposure to the sun. Okay, okay. So that will also develop the soil in a different way than any other way. Then the third factor is clearly climate. अभी climates humid हो सकते हैं. Climates can be hot and humid, cold and dry. They can be hot and dry. They can be monsoon. They can be equatorial climates. Okay, where it rains a lot and it is very sunny also. So we are saying that in the climate, two things are going to matter most within the climate also. One is moisture, like how much amount of water is available, and secondly, what kind of temperature is available. Okay. So if you're talking of in moisture, if you're talking of wet equatorial areas, who was asking me about leaching yesterday? Who asked me about leaching? You discussed what is leaching. Leaching. This is what happens in leaching. In wet equatorial areas, what happens is there is a heavy rainfall. Okay, वहां पे in equatorial areas रोज 2 से 4 के बीच में बारिश होती है 3 4 5 बजे every day. It rains almost like there may be 3 or 4 days in a month where it doesn't rain, but otherwise it rains every day. Okay, every day those cumulonimbus clouds are formed and the rains come down. All right, okay. So what happens is because of those heavy rains, there is the material in the soil is removed away. It's literally being washed away. Okay, so this process is called as leaching. So once again, if you are in such a region, then the soil will not be very fertile because most of the minerals in the soil are being washed off. All right. Okay. Whereas in very dry climates, what happens is this is a problem unique to India. But look, we face this problem a lot, especially in the northern side of India and the continental side of India. Okay. In very dry climates, what happens is whatever soil was there, whatever water existed in the groundwater existed in the soil, okay, that starts to evaporate, rapidly evaporate करता है. तो capillary action से वो पानी भी ऊपर जाता है. You understand capillary action, right? So the water starts to go upward in the upper layers of the soil because of the capillary action. It is not just the water that comes up. What does it bring along with itself? Minerals. Okay. तो वो अपने साथ साथ वो minerals भी रहता है. The water evaporates, leaving the minerals behind, and minerals के ऐसे छोटे छोटे nodules बन जाते हैं. Okay. In specifically in India, we call that as kankar. Okay. And that mixes with the fertility of the land, and it just destroys the fertility of the land. Okay. So this happens in a very dry place. Usually in very dry, arid places, this is a huge problem. The formation of kankars is a huge problem. Okay. ठीक है. As far as temperature is concerned, जितना ज़्यादा temperature rise करेगा, उतना chemical activity enhance होता है. Okay. So you see why they say that in a colder place, if you ever try to make fertilizers, if you try to make your own fertilizer, natural fertilizers, then they will always tell you keep it in a drier and a little colder place. Okay. The more you expose it to the sun, the more the temperature increases, the microbial activity increases even further, and because of that the decomposition happens faster. Okay. You want the humus to remain in the soil for at least some period of time for it to contribute to the fertility of the soil. Okay. Okay. So the faster the temperature rises, the greater the chemical activity, and then soil formation bhi utna accelerate ho jata hai. Okay. Biological, clearly this is a warning ki if you are in frozen areas, semi-frozen areas, then clearly do not expect a good quality of soil. You cannot expect a good quality of soil. Okay. Okay. Let's look at the biological activity. Humus or organic matter is important. It is going to contribute to the fertility of the soil. Okay. So once again, that is developed better in cold climates as opposed to hot climates. Okay. Hot climates will tend to accelerate or rapidly accelerate the biological activity, the activity of decomposition, and then the humus will be removed totally from the soil. Okay. And that does not help us in any way. And lastly, you have to consider time. You have to give soil a certain number of years to develop. You cannot not give that soil that much time. Okay, the soil really does take a few decades to develop, and you need to give it that decades or maybe hundreds of years to develop, and you need to give that soil that much time. Okay, you cannot just if it does not reach that stage of maturation, if the horizons are not properly formed, then clearly that does not help. Okay, that time is essential. The time has to be provided. Okay, okay. And the last thing is a soil profile. Okay. ये जो multiple layers of soil आपको नजर आ रहे हैं, all these multiple layers of soil, that is called as a soil profile. Okay, it looks like a proper soil profile. We are saying that these multiple layers, the layers of soil are called as horizons. Okay, they are individually called as horizons. So we are saying the uppermost layer is the O horizon. Usually it contains all the organic material and all that. Okay, it will also contain the humus and all. The second layer, the layer below it, and that is the most visible layer. Right? It holds all the plantation and vegetation and all. It will hold all that. The next layer is more important. It is the topsoil. Okay, this topsoil is very important. It contains humus, it contains inorganic minerals and living creatures. Okay, this is the layer that we really need to protect. Okay, and then comes below the topsoil, you will get the subsoil. Now what happens? Sorry, below the topsoil you get the elevated horizon, the E layer, E horizon. Now, in that layer, what happens is finer materials, because of the passage of water, when the water seeps downwards, along with the water, the finer materials move from this E zone to the B and C zone. Okay, they start moving downwards. The materials start moving downwards. The process of the materials moving downwards is called as eluviation. ELUVITAION. Okay, eluviation. That is what it is called. Eluviation. Okay. and the way and the process in which they accumulate in the lower layers is called as eluviation with an I. Okay, the process of moving downwards is called as an eluviation with an E, and the process of settling in the lower layers is called as eluviation with an I. Okay, agreed? Okay. And lastly, you have the parent material. It is the parent material which is going to contribute all the major minerals to that particular soil. See people, क्या होता है ना, let's see, एक rock है, okay, एक rock बैठा होता है, तो उसका एक core stone होता है, okay, सबसे hard वाला part जो होता है वो core stone होता है उसका. उसके बाजू में जितना भी मटेरियल होता है, यूजुअली ग्रैन्युलर फॉर्म में हो, क्रिस्टलाइज फॉर्म में हो, दैट स्टार्ट्स टू वेदर, इट स्टार्ट्स टू डिसइंटीग्रेट, इट स्टार्ट्स टू ब्रेक डाउन, एंड जब वो ब्रेक डाउन करता है तो रेगुलेट के फॉर्म में छोटे 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 पार्टिकल्स, छोटे छोटे ग्रेन्स के फॉर्म में बाजू बाजू में गिरता है. ओके, उसको बुलाते हैं रेगुलेट. ओके, नाउ व्हाट हैपेंस इज, वो जो मटेरियल, वो सॉइल उसी से बनता है. ये जब और थोड़ा सा ज्यादा फाइन हो जाता है तो इट विल एवेंचुअली फॉर्म द सॉइल. ओके, तो फाइनली व्हाट हैपेंस इज, ये जो पैरेंट मटेरियल है, वो जो कोर स्टोन था, तो उसके जो भी मिनरल या केमिकल या फिजिकल प्रॉपर्टीज होंगे वही उस सॉइल के भी होंगे ना. दैट इज वेयर द ओरिजिनल मिनरल्स आर कमिंग फ्रॉम. ओके, सो दैट इज योर पैरेंट मटेरियल. एंड लास्टली दैट the last material is the bedrock, the proper rock over which the entire soil is based. Okay, ठीक है. आपको questions usually अभी UPSC just last time they asked you that question of elevation and elevation, but that is a rare thing. Once again, the most questions they ask you is ऐसे लैंडस्लाइड वगैरह पे क्वेश्चंस पूछते हैं आपको, या फिर फैक्टर्स पे क्वेश्चंस पूछते हैं. या क्या हो गया, वापस एक्सप्लेन करूं. सबसॉइल क्या होता है? ओ, सबसॉइल क्या होता है? सबसॉइल जो होता है बी वाला लेयर, उसमें यूजुअली आपके सारे कंपाउंड्स होते हैं, आयरन, एल्यूमिनियम, ह्यूमिक कंपाउंड्स वगैरह. एंड जो ऊपर से मटेरियल नीचे आता है, फाइनर मटेरियल, क्ले वगैरह जैसा मटेरियल या मिनरल्स ऊपर से जो नीचे लाए जाते हैं, वो उस लेयर में जाके सेटल हो जाते हैं. ओके, हमारे लिए ये लेयर इंपॉर्टेंट, ए वाला जो लेयर होता है ना, दैट इज मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट, बिकॉज वहां से प्लांट्स अपना सारा न्यूट्रिशन डिराइव करते हैं. सो इफ दैट लेयर गोज इनटू अ प्रॉब्लम, देन द एंटायर वेजिटेशन आल्सो सफर्स. हाँ, अभी हम क्या करते हैं, you guys take a 5 minute break. If you're leaving the classroom, come back again, because I'll start in exactly 5 minutes and I'll discuss the PYQs after that. Okay, you go, but come back.
Ma'am, can you please unmute your mic?
Sorry, I wasn't talking at all. I gave the class a 5 minute break. I thought you heard me that time, and so I muted my mic. Okay, we are on. Now we'll discuss the PYQs related to mass movements. People, can I have your attention? We are back on. We are going to discuss the very first question. We are just discussing the mass movements value questions. We are not going to discuss the ones with the weathering part, okay? Because we already did that yesterday. Okay, here we are. Question 118. Which of the following statements with reference to soil forming processes are correct? Okay. First statement says translocation, enrichment, removal, and transformation are different classes of soil forming processes. The second statement says in translocation, fine particles are transported downward by alluviation and accumulate in the lower horizons by alluviation. Okay. Which do you think are the correct statements? First statement को discuss करते हैं. Is that right? ट्रांसलोकेशन होता है मतलब मटेरियल ऊपर नीचे मूव कर सकता है. ओके एनरिचमेंट माने जैसे सब सॉइल में जाके मटेरियल डेवलप सिट बैठ गया था एंड उसको एनरिच कर दिया था, वो एक चीज हो सकती है. रिमूवल माने लीचिंग वगैरह के प्रोसेस से मटेरियल इज रिमूव फ्रॉम द सॉइल. ओके एंड ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन माने सॉइल ट्रांसफॉर्म कर जाता है. ओके चारों क्लासेस है बराबर बराबर वही क्लासेस है सॉइल फॉर्मेशन के. सो वी से यस. ओके ये बिल्कुल सही आंसर है ये वाला. एंड इन ट्रांसलोकेशन के प्रोसेस में पार्टिकल्स पार्टिकल्स आर ट्रांसपोर्टेड डाउनवर्ड बाय एलुविएशन and accumulate in the lower layers by alluviation. Yes, that is also very correct. So we'll go with both 1 and 2. Okay, boys at the back, I won't tell you again to be quiet. चलो यार आप लोग खड़े होके इसका जवाब दे दीजिए. चलो किसको बोलूं मैं? You, the one sitting in the middle. ऐसे जो बैठे हैं वो. हाँ आप बिल्कुल सही. आप क्वेश्चन पढ़िए और बताइए आंसर क्या होगा. हाँ दिख नहीं रहा है, मैं पढ़ के बताती हूँ, आप सुन लीजिए. While traveling to a hilly region, you notice a massive boulder which was loosened by heavy rains and moved downhill. Okay. Now this has resulted due to which of the following processes? Mass wasting, erosion, weathering. कौन से प्रोसेस की वजह से एक बड़ा सा मैसिव बोल्डर है, it has been loosened and it has been brought downhill. Sift mass wasting will contribute to it. To weathering and erosion play no part. वेदरिंग एंड मास वेस्टिंग इरोजन का कोई वास्ता नहीं हो सकता. पढ़ा नहीं अब तक. हाँ मुझे कल ऐसा जवाब दिया किसी ने कि अब तक हमने पढ़ा नहीं, तो हमको लगा नहीं होगा उसका पार्ट. ऐसे बोलिए तीनों इंपॉर्टेंट है. सी पीपल व्हाट हैपेंस इज द रीजन व्हाई द रॉक चेंजेस और व्हाई द रीजन व्हाई इट इज कम ऑफ unsupported unconsolidated is because it is being acted upon by all these forces, whether you are talking about erosion or weathering or mass wasting. सबके mass wasting में तो clearly वो movement ऊपर से नीचे आई है, लेकिन the reason why वो वहां से निकल कर नीचे आया है is because of erosion and weathering. Okay अगर erosion weathering काम नहीं कर रहे होते तो वो कहाँ नीचे आता. Okay ठीक है. So we are saying that these two are most important. These three, all of these three will matter. So we'll go with 1, 2 and 3. Okay तीनों options है हमारे. ये वाला क्वेश्चन 119। हाँ जी, आप ही खड़े हो जाइए। पीच कलर्ड शर्ट, पीच ही है ना, क्या बोलेंगे आपको? हाँ जी। Which of the following statements in respect of landslides are correct? These occur only on gentle slopes during rain. They generally occur in clay rich soil, and earthquakes trigger landslides. Earthquakes trigger landslides. You have no clue. Guess वैस भी नहीं लेना है। आपके दोस्त को कहिए, वो जो आपके साइड में बैठे। Try this. Which of the following statements in respect of landslides are correct? They occur only on gentle slopes during lake. हाँ, बैठना नहीं है। They occur only on gentle slopes during rain. They generally occur in clay rich soil, and earthquakes trigger landslides. कौन सा? Earthquakes trigger landslides. All three. You're saying all three are important. All three are correct. Gentle slope पे landslide होगा। क्यों? Gentle माने ऐसा स्लोप है। ऐसे स्लोप पे कितना मूवमेंट होगा यार बिना पानी का, या पानी के साथ भी? Landslides कहाँ अकर करते हैं? Steep slopes. Will gentle slopes work as the same as steep slopes? No, right? Okay, so we will just cross off that first statement. वो नहीं हो सकता है। Gentle slopes पे landslides नहीं होते हैं, usually steep slopes पे होते हैं। Okay, landslide के लिए rapid movement is more important. The movement has to be a little rapid for it to have the same scale of a landslide. Okay, so clearly we are saying we are not talking about gentle slopes. We are saying slopes have to be a bit steeper. Okay, they generally occur in clay rich soils. The one behind you, आपके पीछे जो बैठे हो, वो जो बात कर रहे हैं, उनको उठाइए। हेलो, स्टैंड अप प्लीज। हाँ जी। कैन यू टेल मी वेदर द सेकंड स्टेटमेंट इज करेक्ट और रॉन्ग? इनकरेक्ट और करेक्ट? सेकंड स्टेटमेंट सही है या गलत? दिख रहा है? हाँ दिख रहा है, गुड, ओके। दे जनरली अकर इन लैंडस्लाइड्स जो होते हैं, दे जनरली अकर इन क्ले रिच सॉइल्स। व्हाई डज दैट हैपन रियली, एंड इफ यस देन व्हाई? इफ नो देन व्हाई? पर्सन नेक्स्ट टू यू सो गए क्या? नहीं तो सोने दीजिए उनको, दूसरे वाले को हटाइए, उठाइए। वो भी सो रहे, आपके पीछे जो उनके पीछे जो बैठे हैं उनको उठाइए। क्या लगता है आपको सेकंड स्टेटमेंट के बारे में? सही है, गलत है, क्यों है दोनों केसेस में? गलत है? सही है? क्लेरेट सॉइल्स में ही होगा लैंडस्लाइड्स अक्सर। क्यों होंगे? क्ले क्या? आई कांट हियर द थिंग यू आर सेइंग। इरोजन जल्दी होगा। हम इरोजन की बात नहीं कर रहे, हम मास वेस्टिंग की बात कर रहे हैं। वी जस्ट वांट द मटेरियल टू मूव डाउन स्लोप, और कुछ नहीं चाहिए हमको। क्ले की वजह से सब नीचे आ जाएगा, पानी की वजह से नीचे आ जाएगा। क्ले की जरूरत नहीं है फिर तो पानी की जरूरत है, तो क्ले का क्या वास्ता है यहाँ पे? आप सोचिए ना, क्वेश्चन पूछा है उन्होंने तो अभी तक कुछ तो सुना होगा अपने क्लास में। अग्रीड, आप बिल्कुल भी ध्यान नहीं दे रहे थे, बट सम स्निपेट्स ऑफ इंफॉर्मेशन मस्ट हैव लैंडेड समवेयर टैंजेंशियली एट लीस्ट नियर योर हेड। व्हाई एम आई आस्किंग अबाउट क्ले? पानी चाहिए ये सही है, लेकिन क्ले का पानी से क्या वास्ता? क्ले पानी का क्या करेगा? पर्सन नेक्स्ट टू यू, उनको जवाब आता है तो पूछिए। अरे वो तो हंस रहे हैं। हाँ जी बोलिए। क्या करेंगे क्ले का? क्ले का और पानी का क्या वास्ता, क्या संबंध? नहीं, द पर्सन नेक्स्ट टू यू। Is clay related to water in any way in case of a landslide? No. Okay, the person behind you. जवाब नहीं देना है, नहीं आता है. Is there somebody sitting next to you? Show me your face, Baba. Okay. Hi. Do you wish to, you have no question, you have no opinion to venture on this? Blue shirt, hello. Hanji, yes, you. Do you have an opinion on this? Do you have an opinion on the second statement? No, you are not with us. The person in front of you. वो जो अभी अभी सो गए उनको उठा लीजिए. हाँ जी. He refuses to wake up. He was awake for quite some time. Stand up, बच्चे. Stand up. कुछ ओपिनियन है क्ले के और पानी के बारे में? नहीं, कोई ओपिनियन नहीं. इन लोगों को उठाइए जो सामने सो रहे. They will all have opinions on clay and water. Unbelievable, I'm doing this in the classroom. उठ जाइए. क्रीम कलर शर्ट. बेज है आप शायद. बोलिए सर. What do we do with that clay rich soil? Does it have anything to do with a landslide? Does it have anything to do with lubricating water? You find it as more interesting. The person next to you. We are talking about the second statement in question 119. Earth to everyone. बोलो. अरे आप कैसे मिस हो गए? अच्छा आप बात ही नहीं कर रहे थे इसलिए. देखिए अगर आप मेरी क्लास में ना बैठे होते तो मैं आपको क्यों उठा के सवाल पूछती? आई आस्क्ड यू दिस क्वेश्चन बिकॉज यू weren't paying attention. I told you to go and sit in some class where you're going to study and do something constructive. You chose to sit here and talk. बोलिए सर, आता है जवाब? नहीं, मुझे आप सिर्फ सेकंड स्टेटमेंट पे ओपिनियन लीजिए और कुछ नहीं चाहिए मैंने. क्या करना है? they generally occur in clay rich soils. लैंडस्लाइड्स जो होते हैं, इनका कहना है कि लैंडस्लाइड्स जो है they usually occur in clay rich soils. जहां पर क्ले ज्यादा होता है वहां पर अक्सर आपको लैंडस्लाइड्स मिलते हैं, ऐसे वो उनका कहना है. आपको क्या लगता है वो सही बोल रहे हैं या गलत? गलत बोल रहे हैं. हाँ ठीक है, आपके दोस्त उनको जवाब देने दीजिए. You have no opinion at all. Okay, the person in front of you. So he also has no opinion. Do you have an opinion? No, but you can stand up. No problem. We can all stand up. You, sir, the next person. You were actually looking at me. What were you thinking when you were looking at me? You were simply spacing out, were you? आपके दोस्त को उठाइए. ये मुझको ऐसा लुक दे रहे हैं कि कौन ऐसे दोपहर की नींद खराब करके क्वेश्चंस पूछता है. बोलिए भला. हाँ? He is actually angry that somebody woke him up. Do you have an opinion on the second statement of this question? Question 119. Can you see the second statement there? The landslides will occur in clay rich regions. Does this people, yaar, chup ho jaiye. Does this statement hold any truth? सही है, गलत है, क्यों नहीं है? ऑप्शंस मत बताइए, सिर्फ हाँ या ना कहिए. स्टेटमेंट सही है या स्टेटमेंट गलत है? सेकंड स्टेटमेंट. You guys remain standing. Okay. Anybody else would like to venture an opinion? आपको बात करना अलाउड नहीं है. एंड आप कौन से बेसिस पे बैठ गए भाई? बाकी के तो अच्छा वो उठे ही नहीं थे, अभी अभी उठ गए हैं. गुड मॉर्निंग. वो जो दोनों पीछे बैठे हैं वो. एनीवेज, एनीबडी एल्स, डू यू हैव एन ओपिनियन? क्ले रिच सॉइल्स में होगा या नहीं होगा? हाँ जी. यस होगा. क्यों? Absolutely, water hold करता है clay, and that is why it will become fluid. वो flow करेगा सब कुछ नीचे. So this statement is absolutely correct. Okay, they generally occur in clay rich soils. Is this clear to everyone standing? You're still not paying attention. Okay, आपने बोला था ये? नहीं बोला था. Did you say yes to this? No, you did not. You, sir, you in the front. Yeah, you. Oh, okay. ठीक है. Earthquakes trigger landslides. Does this statement hold true? Yes, statement सही है. Yes, yes, of course, yes. So we are going with 2 and 3. Okay. This is a good question. Consider the following features about a geographical phenomenon. Torrents of snow. अभी वो आपको एक geographical phenomenon describe कर रहे हैं. That there are torrents of snow and ice that are roaring down a steep mountain slide. Okay, there is a steep mountain side और वहां से वो बड़ा सा huge mass of ice and snow जो होता है वो एकदम झट से नीचे आ रहा है. It is hazardous to skiers and mountaineers. वो लोग जो स्की करते हैं, माउंटेन हाइकिंग करते हैं, उनके लिए बहुत मुश्किल होता है ये. इनफैक्ट ये उन लोगों के लिए भी बहुत प्रॉब्लमैटिक होता है जो वो एवरेस्ट की तरफ जाते हैं ना, एवरेस्ट स्केल करते हैं, एवरेस्ट को स्केल करने की कोशिश करते हैं, उनके लिए भी बहुत हैजर्डस होता है ये. एंड इट इज अ मिक्स ऑफ फॉलिंग, रोलिंग, स्लाइडिंग एंड फ्लोइंग ऑफ मटेरियल्स. तो आपको बताना है ये किस तरह का प्रोसेस है. स्लम्प एंड अर्थ फ्लो, एवलांच, लैंडस्लाइड, रॉक स्लाइड. avalanche, this is an avalanche. Snow and ice अगर बहुत तेजी से नीचे की तरफ आ जाए तो it has to be an avalanche. Okay, it can be triggered by volcanic eruptions, it can be triggered by earthquakes, it can be triggered by a gunshot. Bond movies will tell you that. Okay, ठीक है. And we are done. ठीक है. Moving on to the next part. नेक्स्ट पार्ट जो है उसमें हम इरोजन एंड डेपोजिशनल लैंडफॉर्म्स कंसीडर करें. यू गाइस सिट डाउन, बहुत हो गया. ओके, नेक्स्ट चैप्टर में हम क्लियरली इरोजनल एंड डेपोजिशनल लैंडफॉर्म्स कंसीडर करेंगे. सो फॉर दैट वी नीड वेरियस. गाइस बी क्वाइट. There is just this much amount of patience I have now. I had assumed you would feel at least a little ashamed that you were not able to answer the most basic question that I've been shouting on the top of my lungs for the last 50 minutes. Normally that is what this is for, that you realize your mistake and learn and move on from it. This is not so that you can, I have not given you a fresh lease of life so that you can go and talk around more. Okay. Agents of erosion जो होते हैं, agents of erosion and deposition. Okay, we are just looking at those. We are looking at 5 of these agents. This is them. Okay, running water and rivers, groundwater, glaciers, sea waves and winds. Okay, ऐसे 5 agents के बारे में बात कर रहे हैं हम लोग. Now these agents are capable of eroding material. Okay, they will usually transport that material from place A to place B and then go and deposit in a place. Okay, place C में जाके वो deposit कर देते हैं. Okay, so this entire process is a 3-step process. First is removal of material, active removal of material. We are not saying like in weathering the material is breaking down, disintegrating and sitting in its place. That is not what we are saying. We are saying there is a proper flowing agent, okay, whether it is wind or water or sea waves or whatever, but there is a proper flowing, moving agent. It is coming down to up to this crust or up to this rock. It will remove parts of this rock. It will take those parts that it moved along with it. It will transport it to another place and deposit it over there. Okay, this is the process: erosion, transportation, deposition. Okay, that is what we are looking at. तो ये जो processes होते हैं उसके अलग-अलग छोटे-छोटे processes होते हैं. Okay, this entire all these agents, depending on which agent it is and what is its speciality or what its special feature is, these will work in different processes. Okay, so we are going to look at all these processes. If you are in state board, if you took up geography, you can recognize you've done this before last year, sometime in 11th standard. Okay, are you guys not from state board? Do you not have geography? This is part of your textbook, Pacha. This is all part of your textbook. This is chapter, what is this? Chapter 3, Agents of Erosion. बहुत मुश्किल है आप लोग का. Anyways, here we are. The first process is plucking. Okay, plucking मतलब क्या? कोई चीज को उठा के निकाल देना. ओके, दैट इज प्लकिंग. सो ये यूजुअली आइस के साथ होता है. आइस जो होता है, ग्लेशियर्स वगैरह जो होते हैं, दे परफॉर्म प्लकिंग. ओके, दे विल इंडल्ज इन प्लकिंग एंड ऑल. ओके, अब्रेजन का मतलब होता है स्क्रैचिंग एंड पॉलिशिंग. सैंड पेपर से जो इफेक्ट मिलेगा ना, वो इफेक्ट की बात करें हम लोग. ओके, तो स्क्रैच करता है वो भी मटेरियल जो भी होगा, तो मटेरियल के अंदर जो लोड होता है ना, फॉर एग्जांपल वी आर टॉकिंग ऑफ रिवर वाटर. ओके, तो रिवर वाटर इज गोइंग टू कैरी विद इटसेल्फ स्मॉलर पेबल्स और स्मॉलर पीसेस ऑफ रॉक और समथिंग लाइक दैट. ओके, they will scratch and polish the surface of the sides of the river or something like that, and that process will be called abrasion. Same with the glacier, same with sea waves, because sea waves will also contain those little rocks and stones. Okay, ठीक है. The next is attrition. Attrition is Now nothing happens to the surface through which the rock is moving. We are saying within the load as in whatever the water or the air is carrying, within the load, whatever pieces of material exist, go out. Whoever was talking, go out. Were you talking? And this time, when I finalize that you people are not sitting in the lecture, you're not sitting in the lecture ever. You can listen to these lectures online on YouTube, they're available there. But I will not entertain any of you again in my classroom if I throw you out now. And you can go and speak to Anis Bhaiya about it. I'll explain to Bhaiya in my own words how this works. ओके वी आर सेइंग एट्रिशन में द लोड जो होता है वो जो छोटे छोटे पेबल्स कैरी करता है वो पेबल्स जाके एक दूसरे के साथ कोलाइड करते हैं ओके दोस पेबल्स गो एंड कोलाइड विद ईच अदर एंड बिकॉज दे कोलाइड विद ईच अदर their size reduces okay because of the friction and the force and all their size reduces that process is called as attrition okay next is solution is a normal process the minerals water soluble minerals from the rock are removed and that is what solution is okay deflation is a very specific process to related to wind okay what wind does is it will go in that circular eddies ke fashion mein jayega and it will remove the sand okay that process is called as deflation okay drilling is a very interesting process related to rivers okay what this does is can you see this rock okay this is the bed of the river okay this portion that you can see is the bed of the river okay now what happens is the load carries a rock there is a rock within a huge boulder within the load okay then it goes and it creates some sort of friction over here at the very base of the bed okay and yahan par it starts creating a small depression okay then as and how because it is moving around right the water will move like this around it in the form of eddies around the boulder because that boulder is an obstruction the river water will move around in eddies so it will give it that washing machine wala motion देगा वो उसको okay and वो जो गोल गोल घूमता है उसकी वजह से यहाँ पर नीचे एक डिप्रेशन डेवलप होता है the depression goes on becoming bigger and bigger and bigger ultimately forming larger holes like this okay बड़े बड़े potholes बनाता है let me show you what those potholes look like because that is definitely an erosional feature. ये क्या है? ये क्या है? This is what those potholes look like. You have seen this near rivers. This is a very common thing to see, right? This is a smaller scale पे ऐसा दिखता है. Larger scale पे there is a place near Pune only, निगोज नाम की जगह है. वहाँ का landscape है ये. Okay, so potholes जब बहुत बड़े-बड़े बन जाते हैं, जब join कर जाते हैं, तो usually ऐसे बड़े-बड़े गड्ढों की तरह depressions की तरह दिखते हैं. Okay, so this is what potholes look like. So we are looking at proper potholes over here. Okay. So this process is called as drilling, okay, and it is exclusive to rivers and the load that they carry with it, okay. That is drilling. Next is within the rivers also there is one process called as down cutting. Okay, when the river goes forward, when the river is moving forward in this fashion, the usually in the upper stages of the river when it has a good good rapid amount of rapid होता है, अच्छा amount of speed होता है, it will cut downwards. Okay, वो vertical cutting करता है. Okay, that is called as down cutting. All right, ठीक है. Headward erosion is a very specific erosion. Say, let's say the river started from this point. Okay, this is where the river started from, and this is the downslope movement of the river. Okay, due to some reasons, sometimes because the gradient changes over here, or because there is a lot of rainfall, instead of moving downwards, instead of starting the erosion in this fashion, sometimes it goes backward. Okay, जहाँ से शुरू हुआ था, वहीं से पीछे पीछे की तरफ, from that point onwards, the river will go and start eroding backwards. Okay, this is called as headward erosion. Okay, ये type का erosion जो होता है, it's a little rare and it is called as headward erosion. That guy, ask him to move out. The person sitting next to you, yeah. Leave the classroom. Leave now before I permanently ban you from here. आपको किसी ने कंपलसरी बिठाया है क्या यहाँ पे? अनीस भैया ने कहा है कि यहाँ बैठना है, नहीं बैठेंगे तो दूसरे क्लास में नहीं बैठ सकते. Go and tell him na that you want to do maths or something else. I really don't understand why you're sitting in this class and disturbing my class. Crazy people. Anyways, lateral erosion. Lateral माने this. We are talking of this movement now. तो now we are अगर lateral erosion करना है तो river जब earlier stages में होता है उसका speed बहुत fast होता है तो clearly उसका सारा concentration नीचे की तरफ होता है. नीचे की तरफ down cutting करते हुए river आगे जाएगा. Okay, vertical erosion करवाएगा. जब river आराम से plains में आता है तो अपने आप उसका speed कम हो जाता है because now the speed is not dictated by the slope. मतलब clearly you don't have a great slope for a great amount of speed. अब speed slow हो जाएगा क्योंकि slope भी थोड़ा सा सीधा है. तो in this case what happens is the river will स्प्रेड एंड वो अपने सारे लोड जो कैरी कर रहा है, ट्रांसपोर्ट कर रहा है अपने साथ, उसके साथ वो साइडवर्ड्स इरोजन करेगा. ओके, ये साइडवेज वो पाथ क्लियर करता जाएगा एंड दैट इज कॉल्ड एज लैटरल इरोजन. दिस साइडवेज इरोजन करेगा. अर्लियर कैसा इरोजन कर रहा था? डाउनवर्ड्स इरोजन कर रहा था इन द अर्ली स्टेजेस. ओके, नाउ इट विल डू अ साइडवेज इरोजन, सो दैट इज कॉल्ड एज लैटरल इरोजन. रिवर्स ग्लेशियर्स, सी वेव्स, ऑल ऑफ देम डू दिस. ओके, ट्रांसपोर्टेशन के प्रोसेस में traction होता है where larger amount of material is dragged along the bed of the river, that is called as traction. Saltation माने jumping करते हैं, a little smaller size of pebbles which will jump from place A to place B, place B to place C, place C to place D, that sort of thing. Once again, that happens in rivers, winds or seaways. And then there is suspension when the particles are too light. If they are very small, then they are clearly suspended in the water. Okay, they float in the water and are carried away. And solution माने they are dissolved in the water and carried forward with the water. Okay, so now these have to have some sort of liquid in it. So this is all rivers, sea water, groundwater, ये वाले agents है यहाँ पे. Okay, and deposition का process नहीं होता है. Deposition के लिए ना you need the agent to really slow down. Okay, you want the agent to really slow down. It should be in a very बहुत movement का जो rate होता है वो बहुत कम हो जाता है चाहिए. उसके पास load भी बहुत ज्यादा हो गया. In that case हम नहीं स्कूल से घर जाते हैं तो पहले वो बैग फेंक देते हैं अपना जो कैरी कर रहे थे, वैसा ही करता है ये. It just throws away all that load and says I'm leaving my own way. Okay, so that is what happens. It will drop that load and it will walk its own way. Okay, that is essentially what all the agents are doing. So that is where the deposition happens. Are we clear about the various processes? Now we begin with fluvial landforms today. Shush, shush. Go here. Okay. Geomorphic landforms, when we say geomorphic agents, we are saying all those agents which will change the surface of the earth. Okay, so in geomorphic processes, we had earlier covered endogenic movements, where we said that the internal energy of the earth is responsible for whatever changes are happening on the surface of the earth. Okay, then we said we'll look at the external elements that affect the changes on the surface of the earth. उसमें हमने weathering cover किया, mass movements cover किया, और अभी हम erosion and deposition देखेंगे. And उसके लिए हमको ये चार ये चाहिए. What do you say? We need these 5 agents. Okay, we need these 5 agents to work for us: running water, rivers, groundwater, glaciers, sea waves, and winds. Okay, these are the ones. We begin with running water or rivers. Okay, anything related to rivers is called as fluvial. वो उसका adjective है. So river से बने हुए landforms, either erosional or depositional, will be termed as fluvial landforms. ठीक है? This is the word for it, fluvial landforms. All right, ठीक है? अब ये जो fluvial landforms है, they can, like I said, the river can either perform erosional activities in the earlier stages of the river when it's coming down the mountain slope. When it hits the plains, the most of those activities are depositional. Okay, ठीक है? So we are discussing the erosional landforms first and then the depositional landforms. All right, in the earlier stage of the river, when the river is very fast, when the river is coming down a slope, clearly वो erosional activities करेगा because of the speed. And जब उसने enough material accumulate किया है, बहुत ज्यादा load accumulate किया है, and now it has hit the plains and उसका speed भी कम हो गया है, तो clearly अब वो उस material को जगह जगह पे deposit करके आगे move करने की कोशिश करेगा. ठीक है, चलेगा? So now erosional landforms जो है early stages में वगैरह जो होते हैं, we are looking at those. We are saying river capture. First is, अब river capture कोई landform नहीं है, it's a proper process. River capture is not a landform. Let me remind you, it's a proper process over here, but we need to understand because it happens in the earlier stages of the river. Usually जहाँ river शुरू हो जाती है ना, head stream जहाँ होती है river की, वहाँ पर usually आपको ये river capture मिल जाता है. Okay, among the other erosional landforms you will find valleys, river valleys मिलते हैं, V-shaped valleys जो सबसे common होते हैं. There are gorges formed and then there are a special type of river valleys called as canyons. Okay, तो वो होते हैं. Rapids, cataracts, waterfalls, those are again थोड़ा सा change हो जाता है. लैंड का जो स्लोप होता है वो बीच में से थोड़ा चेंज हो जाता है, तो आपको ये मल्टीपल कैटेगरीज के फीचर्स मिलते हैं. ओके, रिवर टेरेसेस करके एक चीज मिल जाएगी and incised and entrenched meanders मिल जाएंगे. Okay, among the depositional landforms what you will find is, and of course these will be in the later stages when the river is in the plains, जब river plains में होता है तब. Alluvial fans and cones, these are the first ones that the river makes when the river comes down from the foothills. Okay, जब river hills से mountain से नीचे आता है, तो the first landform it creates is either alluvial fans or alluvial cones. Okay, then when the river is traversing the plains, तो वो flood plains बनाएगा, बाजू में levees वगैरह बनाएगा, natural levees, point bars and all, it will make all those things. Meanders पता है, स्कूल में पढ़ा था हमने, meanders and oxbow lakes, तो वो एक चीज बन जाएगी. Okay, ब्रेडेड चैनल्स यू माइट बी न्यू टू, लेकिन वो ब्रेडेड चैनल्स बताते हैं। लड़कियों की चोटियां जैसे होती है ना, छोटी छोटी इज अ ब्रेड, ओके। तो चोटी की तरह दिखता है वो, इसलिए उसको ब्रेडेड चैनल्स बुलाते हैं। रिवर एकदम एंड के स्टेजेस में रिवर बिकम्स दिस, ओके। जब डिस्ट्रीब्यूटरीज वगैरह बनाने हैं रिवर ने, तब जाके वो ब्रेडेड चैनल्स बनाता है। एंड लास्टली डेल्टाज एंड एस्चुरीज, ओके। दीज आर द लास्ट ऑफ द depositional landforms. Let's start with the erosional landforms and see them one by one. अरे नहीं, ये पहले देख लीजिए। रिवर या रनिंग वाटर के अर्ली स्टेजेस जो होते हैं, उसमें ऑब्वियसली व्हेन द रिवर इज कमिंग डाउन द माउंटेन स्लोप, तो बिकॉज ऑफ ग्रेविटी इट कम्स डाउन द माउंटेन स्लोप, एंड तभी उसका वेलोसिटी हाई रहता है एंड स्लोप्स बहुत स्टीप होते हैं। सो इरोजन का प्रोसेस हमेशा डोमिनेंट होगा, ओके। इन द अर्ली स्टेजेस द प्रोसेस ऑफ इरोजन इज ऑलवेज गोइंग टू बी अ लिटिल, एम आई गोइंग टू फास्ट? नो, ओके। क्या हो गया? alluvial soil, it is a fertile soil. It is the most fertile soil that you can find. In fact, most of the agriculture in the world usually happens in alluvial soil close to the river banks. वो जो खदर plains होते हैं ना, अपने new plains, जो flood plains जो हमेशा हर साल, what is the color of alluvial soil? Grayish, अपने यहाँ पे grayish मिलता है थोड़ा सा। हाउ डू वी आइडेंटिफाई इट? एक्चुअली अलुवियल सॉइल को उसके सॉइल के कलर पे नहीं आइडेंटिफाई कर सकते, बिकॉज वो सॉइल का कलर तो इस पे डिपेंड करेगा कि आप किस क्लाइमेट में हो एंड किस एरिया में हो। द रीजन एंड द क्लाइमेट विल डिक्टेट इट टू सम लेंथ, बट अलुवियल सॉइल इज एसेंशियली अबाउट द ग्रेन साइज ऑफ इट. द ग्रेन साइज इज इंपॉर्टेंट, द क्ले मटेरियल इज इंपॉर्टेंट, सो एंड द फैक्ट दैट इट कम्स फ्रॉम द रिवर्स, सो दैट इज गोइंग टू बी मोर इंपॉर्टेंट. इन इंडिया इट विल बी अ लिटिल ग्रेइश, स्लाइटली ब्राउनिश टाइप का सॉइल मिलेगा आपको। अपने यहाँ पे तो वैसा मिलता है, बिकॉज there are a few minerals that are very much present in it, and then there are a few which are not present at all. Of course, you go बुरा हाल है आप लोग का। नहीं नहीं, ब्रेक ब्रेक ना लीजिए, मुझे कंप्लीट करना है। आप अपने फोन पे ज्वाइन कर लीजिए। क्या बोलूं मैं आपको? अरे तो फोन में लाइट की क्या जरूरत है आपको? क्या हो गया? नहीं नहीं, यू पीपल ज्वाइन ओवर योर फोन्स बाबा। आई डोंट हैव द ऑप्शन ऑफ लेटिंग दिस लेक्चर गो. What am I looking for? You guys listen there. If you're not going to join online, you just listen. Otherwise, अब क्या कर सकते हैं? People stop talking, please, or I'll declare this chapter over for your this. Send you all out and just teach this guy who's in the lecture. Okay. So in the earlier stages, when the river is running, in the earlier stages, clearly the velocity of the river is very high because it is coming down a steep slope. And because of that, the process of erosion is more dominant, okay? In the later stages, obviously the river is carrying a lot of load with itself. And also it has hit the plains now. So because it has hit the plains, the slope isn't very steep. The slope is pretty flat now. And that is why the process of deposition will be more dominant, okay? The normal processes that are involved in I have for the record, I have offered you the option of joining this meeting on your phones on Zoom. Okay. Sorry, what? नेट आप यहाँ का नेट इस्तेमाल करते हैं, खुद का 4G 5G नहीं यूज करते आप. गेम्स खेलने के लिए दुनिया भर का 4G 5G है, एक लेक्चर सुनने के लिए नहीं है. Agreed. It's very uncomfortable. Okay, so we are saying that the processes that are involved over here are corrosion, abrasion, vertical or lateral corrosion या abrasion हो सकता है. तो वो जो slow people quiet, तो वो जो लोड होता है inside the river, that goes and corrodes against, or that will act in the process of abrasion, and इसलिए vertical या lateral erosion हो जाएगा. Corrosion या solution, once again you have river water, so clearly पानी available है, तो corrosion या solution is going to be one. Hydraulic action होगा, drilling या potholes बनेंगे, and lastly attrition होगा. यार you leave, you three, black shirt, peach shirt, gray shirt, striped shirt, leave. लीव रे बबल, लीव. ओके, तो ये सारी चीजें हो सकती है. रिवर कैप्चर, अब मैं ये बच्चे को कैसे पढ़ाऊं? Okay, we are looking at the process of river capture. Okay, जैसे एक माउंटेन है. ओके, देयर इज स्पेसिफिक माउंटेन जिसकी एक तरफ से एक रिवर जा रहा है और दूसरी तरफ से दूसरा रिवर जा रहा है. ओके, दिस इज व्हाट इज हैपनिंग. सो ये जो माउंटेन होता है ना, इसको कहते हैं वाटर डिवाइड. ओके, इन दिस केस दिस इज कॉल्ड एज अ वाटर डिवाइड. आपको जो डायग्राम्स मिलेंगे पीडीएफ में, उसमें क्लियरली ये माउंटेन नहीं दिखेगा आपको, लेकिन आपको एक स्पेस दिखेगी. इस तरफ से एक रिवर जा रही है, दूसरी तरफ से दूसरी रिवर जा रही है, एंड दिस इज द वाटर डिवाइड दैट वाटर इमेजिन. ओके, ठीक है. So we are saying that this stream is going this way, this stream is going this way, both have their own gradients, their own source, that is why they're moving downwards. Okay, say this has another stream over here, this has another stream over here. Okay, this is stream A and this is stream B. Okay, इसको stream A stream B बोलते हैं. Now what happens is, river capture का मतलब होता है एक रिवर सीधे जाने के बजाय, instead of going straight downwards, instead of going straight in the sloping, जो भी उसका downward natural slope है, उसका वहां से जाने के बजाय what it does is it starts to go and perform headward erosion and starts to cut through this water. Okay? What this happens usually in case of a landslide or an earthquake, some tectonic event has happened which has changed the gradient of the slope. Okay, वो जो slope ऐसा था वो अभी ऐसा हो गया है, and because of that ये headward जिस point से river शुरू हो गया था उसी point से पीछे की तरफ backward fashion में वो जाके पीछे की तरफ इरोड करना शुरू कर देता है. Okay, the erosion starts happening in a headward fashion, in the that is called as headward erosion. So this river starts to cut through this mountain, or rather this water divide, and tries to take the water from this river. Okay, so essentially if this was one river, okay, if this is river B and this was river A, if this was river A, okay, we are saying this was river A. So what happens is this river tries to cut through this water divide. There was a water divide over here. It tries to cut through this water divide and get the water from this river. Okay, once it reaches the slope, once वो इस river तक पहुंच जाता है, तो यहाँ का जो भी पानी आ रहा होगा, यहाँ से जो भी पानी आता होगा वो सब ले जाता है. Okay, all this water is captured. Whatever water was coming from here, okay, whatever water was coming over here, all that water is now diverted in this fashion. वो सारा पानी इस तरफ चला जाएगा. Okay, is this understood? समझा आपको what river capture is? We are saying because इस river का, ये वाली जो river है, उसका slope या gradient बदल जाता है. That is why instead of cutting downwards, वो थोड़ा सा पीछे की तरफ इरोड करना शुरू कर देता है, headward erosion करेगा, ताकि पीछे से water divide से cut करते हुए, it will cut through the water divide, get the water from the other river, capture or literally seal all the water from this river, and then all the water that was originally supposed to go this way is now instead directed in this fashion. Okay, वो सारा पानी इस तरफ direct हो जाता है. समझा? इसको कहते हैं river piracy या river capture. Okay, we call that as river piracy or river capture. एंड इसकी एक टर्मिनोलॉजी है जो आपको पता होनी चाहिए. very bad at drawing diagrams. एक बाय ऐसे, एक बाय ऐसा, ओके। इसको river A बुलाओ, इसको river B बुलाओ. We are saying this river is going to somehow go backwards, and whatever this particular river was, वो उसका पानी कैप्चर करे. Okay, this is the function. Alright, ठीक है. अब ये जिस elbow पे, this turn, okay, and this turn, the stealing or the capture or the theft happened at this turn, right? This is called as the elbow of the capture. Okay. उसको elbow of the capture बुलाते हैं. Okay. अभी अगर क्लियरली यहाँ का पानी कैप्चर हो गया है तो यहाँ से आगे पानी नहीं बहेगा, है ना? क्लियरली देयर विल बी नो मोर वाटर फ्लोइंग फॉरवर्ड. ओके, तो यहाँ पर जो जगह रह जाती है, दिस प्लेस इज कॉल्ड एज अ विंड गैप. ओके, ये जगह यूजुअली पहले रिवर फ्लो किया करती थी. नाउ द रिवर डजंट फ्लो देयर एनीमोर. तो क्लियरली दैट लैंड इज अ वास्ट एंड फ्लैट स्ट्रेच ऑफ लैंड. ओके, फ्लैट वास्ट स्ट्रेच ऑफ लैंड. यूजुअली वहां पे गवर्नमेंट जाके रेलवे लाइन से ऐसा कुछ ली कर देता है. ओके, बिकॉज बना बनाया सारा प्लेटफॉर्म मिल गया आपको, तो वहां पे जाके प्लेटफॉर्म में प्लेटफॉर्म ही जिस खड़े रहते हैं, प्रॉपर रेलवे लाइन जिससे लेकर सकते हो. तो क्लियरली फ्लैट लैंड मिल जाता है, तो यूजुअली वहां पर यूजुअली आप अपने रेलवे लाइंस वगैरह ले करते हो. इस स्ट्रीम को, ये वाली जो स्ट्रीम है, इसका ना कोई अंत है ना कोई, देयर इज नो बिगिनिंग टू इट. यू जस्ट फील दैट देयर इज वाटर, बट यू कांट सी वेयर दैट वाटर इज कमिंग फ्रॉम. तो ये वाली जो स्ट्रीम होती है ना, दिस स्ट्रीम सी, इसको बुलाते हैं मिसफिट. दिस इज कॉल्ड एज अ मिसफिट और a beheaded stream, जिसका सर काट दिया हो ऐसी stream. Okay, a beheaded stream. Is this okay? Okay. So this is called as the elbow of the capture. The space that is left where there used to be water earlier, there is no water anymore, is called as a wind gap. And the stream जिसका पानी चुरा लिया गया, that is called as the misfit of the beheaded stream, because you have no clue where the water is coming from. Okay, ठीक है. और क्या बताऊं मैं आपको इसके बारे में? बस इतना ही. Yeah, this has to be. अच्छा चलो खैर ठीक है. Anyways, here we are going to discuss the rest of the features. We are discussing what valleys and gorges are now. Okay, we'll discuss what the next erosional landforms are. We said valleys होते हैं, river valleys जो होते हैं, they are the erosional landforms. The first type of river valley that we see is V-shaped valleys. Okay, V-shaped valleys बनते हैं, and then clearly उसके बाद gorges होते हैं and canyons होते हैं. Okay. V-shaped valleys, ये ऐसे दो माउंटेन्स है, और उसके बीच में ये जो रिवर फ्लो करता है, दिस इज द रिवर फ्लो. ओके, तो ये जो साइड ऑफ दिखता है आपको, वो वी शेप की तरह दिखता है. उससे को वी शेप वैली, इसलिए उसको वी शेप वैली बोलते हैं. सबसे बेसिक, सबसे नॉर्मल वैली जो बनता है, दैट इज गोइंग टू बी अ वी शेप वैली. ओके, यूजुअली लैंड हैज टू बी रियली होमोजेनियस. अगर होमोजेनियस लैंड वगैरह होगा तब जाके आपके वी शेप वैलीज बनते हैं. ओके, दूसरा वाला जो बनता है, दैट इज अ गॉर्ज. ओके, दूसरी तरह का जो बनता है उसको गॉर्ज बोलते हैं. दूसरी तरफ का जो रिवर वैली है, सेकंड टाइप ऑफ रिवर वैली इज अ गॉर्ज. इट सेज एसेंशियली दिस इज द माउंटेन. ओके, रिवर यहाँ से डाउन कटिंग करना शुरू कर दिया है. ओके, द रिवर स्टार्टेड डाउन कटिंग फ्रॉम दिस साइड एंड देन इट स्टार्टेड कटिंग डाउनवर्ड स्ट्रेट. ओके, ये जो साइड्स होती है, क्लिफ की जो साइड्स है, रिवर के जो वॉल्स है, वो क्लियरली बहुत स्टीप होते हैं और नैरो होते हैं. ओके, द रीजन व्हाई इस तरह का डाउन कटिंग होगा इज बिकॉज द रॉक हियर इज एक्सट्रीमली हार्ड. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, अगर आप इंडस, झेलम वगैरह इनको कंसिडर करो, तो वहां पर आपको हिमालयस मिलता है. ग्रेनाइट एंड नाइस है. ग्रेनाइट एंड नाइस में से कट करना कितना आसान है? बहुत मुश्किल. ओके, इट इज मेटामॉर्फिक. क्लियरली द रॉक इज मेटामॉर्फिक. So clearly you will have to go through, it will have to go through a lot of erosion. बहुत ज्यादा करना पड़ेगा तो कट कर दो. तो lateral erosion नहीं करेगा, वो बहुत ज्यादा स्प्रेड करने की कोशिश नहीं करेगा, पर नैरो नैरो से वैलीज बना दी. ओके, ये ऑन कर कैसे करते हैं अभी? Right? कर दीजिए उसको on. Somebody, let's wait some way for him to do that. लेकिन ये सीधा प्रोजेक्ट नहीं करेगा, ये वहां से करना पड़ेगा। Okay, thank you. Here it is. Look at the figure of the river capture. I'll explain very quickly once again. We are saying river capture happens when one stream of the river captures another stream of the river. Okay. So we are saying essentially somebody has me on somewhere. म्यूट तो कीजिए कम से कम, अगर मैं बात कर रही हूँ तो। ये यहाँ पे जो दिख रहा है वो वाटर वाटर डिवाइड या वाटर शेड होना चाहिए था. ओके, दैट इज गोइंग टू बी द वाटर डिवाइड या वाटर शेड. एंड व्हाट आर यू वाचिंग? What are you both watching? You're watching me? You're watching this lecture? Who's watching that lecture? Oh, that also creates sound. Okay, fine. Okay. I did not hear it all this time. Yes, okay, no problem. So we are saying there's a watershed clearly, and one stream from this side, the another from that side. Now what happens is, ये वाली जो stream होती है ना, we are looking at this stream, okay? This stream goes straight backwards, okay? It performs headward erosion and tries to capture the water of this river, okay? This is what is going to capture. It's going to take in the water. It is going backwards instead of eroding forwards. It is going backwards from the head point, from the source, and going backwards and eroding that and capturing that other stream. Okay. Now what happens is this elbow of capture, this point where it captures the stream is called as the elbow of capture. The gap here that is left between where earlier water there was a channel and the water used to flow is called as a wind gap. And then this stream, ये वाली stream is called as a misfit or a beheaded stream. Okay, ठीक है? Are we good here? हाँ चलो जी, ये रहे आपके वी शेप वैलीज. ये वैलीज आपने हर जगह देखे, यू सीन दिस वैलीज एवरीवेयर, राइट? दीज आर वेरी नॉर्मल वी शेप वैलीज. होमोजेनियस लैंडस्केप दीजिए, लेट द रिवर पास थ्रू द टू माउंटेन थ्रू द माउंटेन गैप्स एंड क्लियरली यू विल फाइंड दिस पर्टिकुलर दिस स्ट्रक्चर. ओके, तो वी शेप वैलीज आर वेरी. यार आपको ये वी शेप दिख रहा है ना, ऐसा वाला शेप एंड ऐसा वाला शेप, ये वी शेप लग रहा है ना आपको प्रॉपर्ली, राइट? तो दीज आर कॉल्ड एज वी शेप वैलीज. ठीक है. नेक्स्ट काइंड ऑफ वैलीज आर गॉर्जेस. ये जो साइड में नजर आ रहा है उसको कहते हैं गॉर्ज. ओके, सो लाइक आई वाज डिस्क्राइबिंग, अगर ये हिमालयाज में हो रहा है तो क्लियरली द रॉक प्रेजेंट ओवर देयर इज आइदर ग्रेनाइट और नाइस. ओके, ग्रेनाइट या नाइस में से कट करना, दे आर एक्सट्रीमली हार्ड एंड रेजिस्टेंट रॉक्स. टू कट थ्रू देम इज गोइंग टू बी अ चैलेंज, अ प्रॉपर चैलेंज. ओके, सो व्हाट हैपेंस इज द रिवर्स डू नॉट ट्राई टू स्प्रेड ओवर देयर. दे मैक्सिमम एक्शन ऑफ दैट इज कॉन्सेंट्रेटेड डाउनवर्ड्स. तो ये वैलीज बहुत स्टीप होते हैं, बहुत नैरो होते हैं और बहुत डीप होते हैं. ओके, They're extremely deep, they are very narrow and they're pretty steep. The walls are very straight. Okay, ये जो walls है उस valley से वो सारे straight नजर आ रहे हैं. You can make out, right? They're pretty straight. Okay, so इनको बुलाते हैं gorges. Okay, the gorges usually and वो ऊपर से लेके नीचे तक from the top to the bottom they are pretty much equal in width. Okay, and these gorges are usually the ones that are formed. ये सारे वो पंजाब system के वो यही है. Okay, so whether you Indus system के Indus, Jhelum, Satluj सबके gorges बनते हैं. Famous, they are all famous for making gorges. Okay. गंगा के अगर आपको गॉर्जेस चेक करने गंगा के या गंगा के ट्रिब्यूटरीज से तो दे यू हैव टू चेक देम आउट समवेयर इन द नेपाल हिमालय से वहां पे यूजुअली आपको बहुत सुंदर गॉर्जेस मिलते हैं उससे. ओके, ठीक है. दिस इज द नेक्स्ट लैंडफॉर्म दैट वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट, कैनियन. आपको ये जो नजर आ रहा है दैट इज कॉल्ड एज द दिस पर्टिकुलर फीचर इज कॉल्ड एज द कैनियन. ओके, ये जो पर्टिकुलर स्पेसिफिक फीचर है दैट इज द ग्रैंड कैनियन ऑन द रिवर कोलोराडो इन द स्टेट ऑफ एरिजोना इन यूएसए. ओके, ठीक है. तो अब ये वाली जो वैली होती है ना ये यूजुअली एरिड रीजन्स का पार्ट है. ओके, एरिड सेमी एरिड रीजन्स में यूजुअली ये वाला लैंडफॉर्म बनता है. ओके, इसके लिए द वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग टू फॉर्म इज कि आपको हॉरिजॉन्टली बेडेड सेडिमेंटरी रॉक्स होने चाहिए. ओके, हॉरिजॉन्टली प्लेस सेडिमेंटरी रॉक्स होने चाहिए. सेडिमेंटरी रॉक्स लेयर्स में आते हैं. अब वो जो लेयर्स है वो हॉरिजॉन्टली एक दूसरे के ऊपर प्लेस होने चाहिए. ओके, the reason why we are looking for that is because these layers will have different properties. Okay, so some layers will be hard, some layers will be soft. If they are alternate hard and soft layers, तो clearly hard layers का क्या होगा, erosion कम होगा. Okay, river की वजह से erosion कम होगा. They will keep protruding outside. What happens to the softer layers? The erosion will be a little more as compared to the hard layers, and they will go inwards. They will try to dent inwards. Okay, वो थोड़ा सा अंदर की तरफ dent हो जाएंगे. समझ रहा है आपको ये? Do you understand this? So clearly आपको ये step like structure मिलता है. ऐसा वाला जो step like structure मिलता है walls को, वो इस वजह से मिलता है क्योंकि कुछ लेयर्स का इरोजन ज्यादा होता है बिकॉज दे आर सॉफ्टर एंड कुछ लेयर्स का इरोजन कम होता है बिकॉज दे आर हार्डर. ओके, दिस हैज टू बी मेड विद हॉरिजॉन्टली बेडेड सेडिमेंटरी रॉक्स, तब जाके आपको ये इफेक्ट मिलेगा. ये अगर वर्टिकली बेडेड सेडिमेंटरी रॉक्स होंगे तो आपको अंदर बाहर ऐसा मिलेगा. ओके, so we are not looking for that, we are looking for ऊपर से नीचे तक step like structure. So these rocks have to be horizontally bedded. Okay, horizontally bedded sedimentary rocks के साथ होगा. Usually you get steep inclines steep ही होता है, gentle inclines नहीं है यहाँ पे. Narrow valleys होते हैं and इस तरह के canyons बनते हैं. Canyon is usually wider at the top than it is at the bottom. It is narrower at the bottom, wider at the top. Okay, ठीक है. ये and remember these are arid semi-arid places के features. ओके, नेक्स्ट इज रैपिड एंड कैटरैक्ट्स. ओके, रैपिड्स आपने गंगा के रैपिड्स देखे हैं ना ऋषिकेश में, वो वाटर राफ्टिंग वगैरह करने जाते हैं, दोज आर कॉल्ड एज रैपिड्स. ओके, वो जिसके ऊपर वो पानी जंप करता है ना उस फीचर को रैपिड कहते हैं. ओके, अगर वो फीचर उससे भी बड़ा होगा, इफ इट इज लार्जर इन साइज, इफ इट इज ग्रेटर इन डायमेंशन, तो फिर उसको कैटरैक्ट्स बुलाते हैं. नाउ दिस बिकम्स अ रियल प्रॉब्लम जब आप शिप्स को छोड़ते हैं नदी में and then you come across a cataract or something like that. Okay, तो वो हमारे लिए अच्छा नहीं होता है बिकॉज हम एडवेंचर स्पोर्ट करके रिवर राफ्टिंग करने जा सकते हैं, हमारे शिप सारा माल लेके एडवेंचर स्पोर्ट नहीं कर सकते. ओके, सो क्लियरली अगर रिवर में कैटरैक्ट्स वगैरह एग्जिस्ट करते हैं तो देन आपको डैम का पानी यूज करके पूरे पानी को लेवल आउट करना पड़ता है, थोड़ा हाई लेवल पे लाना पड़ता है एंड यू हैव टू एलिमिनेट द कैटरैक्ट्स लाइक दैट. ओके, बट वी आर एंजॉयिंग गंगा एंड इट्स रिवर राफ्टिंग एंड द रैपिड्स इट प्रेजेंट्स फॉर अ एडवेंचर स्पोर्ट. वी कैन एंजॉय दैट. ओके, बिकॉज वहां पे हम एक्चुअल शिप्स को नहीं बेचते, वी आर नॉट ट्राइंग to transport material over there, we are just using it for adventure sport. Okay, ठीक है. I'll explain very quickly what rapids and cataracts are. We are saying कि rapids and cataracts तब exist करते हैं जब पूरा का पूरा material homogeneous नहीं होता है. Within this, see this gray colored section, that is the softer rock. Okay, and in that you will find harder rocks embedded. ये वाला rock दिख रहा है, ये वाला rock दिख रहा है, ये वाला rock है. These are harder rocks which are embedded within the softer rocks. What happens now? And this is at the bed of the river. Okay, we are talking about the bed of the river. All right, now what happens is the softer rock will get eroded more and it will go down. Okay, the harder rock will not erode as much and it will protrude upwards. Okay, तो वो जब ऊपर की तरफ protrude करता है तो वो पानी जब यहाँ तक आता है तो वो यहाँ पे ऐसे jump करता है. The water jumps across that rock. Okay, because clearly the rock is a little above, the rock is a little higher than the rest of the bed. तो वो पानी वहाँ पे jump करता है और वो पानी जब jump करेगा तो आप जिस राफ्ट में बैठे हैं वो भी jump करेगा. Okay, so this is what we are talking about. We are saying इसको बुलाते हैं rapids. The river jumps or falls. You can call it both ways. So this, if the jumps are greater in dimension, that will be called as that will be termed as a cataract. Okay. Wait a second. See, this is how it looks like. You can clearly see, right? There is a ये यहाँ पे अभी एक rapid पे है दे आर गोइंग लाइक दिस, राइट? अभी क्लियरली दिख रहा है आपको कि उनका राफ्ट जो है वो थोड़ा टिल्ट हो गया है एंड देन इट इज गोइंग टू गो डाउन बिकॉज दे आर मूविंग अक्रॉस लाइक दैट। ये जो लंबा वाला पिक्चर है यहाँ पे आपको दिखाई दे रहे हो व्हाइट व्हाइट कलर के बबल्स एंड फोम्स जमा हो गए, वो वाली प्लेसेस दिखाई दे रहे। कैन यू सी दिस प्लेस? दिस इज क्लियरली अ रैपिड दैट दे आर क्रॉसिंग। वो थोड़ा सा छोटा सा रैपिड है। यहाँ पर हर जगह पे जहाँ पे वो पानी इकट्ठा हो रहा है, जमा हो रहा है, जंप कर रहा है, यू कैन क्लियरली मेक आउट दोज रैपिड्स। ओके, वो रैपिड्स आप क्लियरली मेक आउट कर सकते हो। कैटरैक्ट्स में आपको दिखा नहीं सकती, दे आर टू ह्यूज टू शो। एंड मोस्ट ऑफ द कंट्रीज, मोस्ट ऑफ द रिवर्स, दे डू हैव कैटरैक्ट्स, दे यूजुअली यूजिंग दोज रिवर्स। फॉर एग्जांपल नाइल इन इजिप्ट में बहुत मेजर कैटरैक्ट्स मिलते थे, तो उन्होंने उसके लिए स्पेशली एक डैम बिल्ड किया, असवान डैम। और सारा पानी के, सपोज कैटरैक्ट्स इस लेवल पे थे तो उन्होंने पानी डैम भर के पानी का लेवल रेज कर दिया, तो वो कैटरैक्ट्स का भी सवाल नहीं उठता है। नाउ द वाटर लेवल इज वे हायर देन द कैटरैक्ट्स एंड दैट इज व्हाई इंडिया शिप्स डू नॉट नीड टू जंप ओवर एवरी कैटरैक्ट एनीमोर। ओके, क्लियरली? ठीक है, we'll stop here because it's already 4 o'clock. This lecture goes on till 4 o'clock. I have no clue what you guys are doing next. I'm stopping. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Vincent.